Actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show.
Hey, look at me. I'm the captain now. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a lovely day. Thank you so much for being here. If you haven't yet, please do me a favor. Hit that like button to help us out by sharing the show. Hit the red pill, hit the thumbs up. Whichever platform you are on, I would sincerely appreciate it. Thank you very much, everyone. Listen, I can't do Somali. I don't even know how to do Somali. We're actually going to see a clip from a Somali today, so maybe I'll work on my Somali accent, but I don't know. I didn't even think about it. I just was like, hey, I should probably do the I'm the captain now line right here. All right, so I think it was Joan. Joan had asked if the deep state realizes Trump is toying with him yet. I'm pretty sure they've been aware that they are being toyed with for quite some time. Liana Wilbert, thank you very much for sending over the raid over on Pilled. Appreciate you, my friend. Judy the Lady Pug, thank you for the cookie on Pilled as well. Yeah, so things are not looking good for Tim Walz. The Minnesota Somali fraud is now front and center on the minds of the administration. There are a number of different federal agencies that are doing investigations, looking directly into what's happening in Minnesota. Tim Walz himself is now under federal investigation. Sassy Gal says, please share the Florida 2024 scorecard I sent you on X. Let me find it. All right, we'll look into that in just a moment, but I need you to sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn because we're about to get into it right about now. All right, and here we go. Somali accent, just subtract 100 IQ points. That's about it. I don't know that I can mentally or even physically do that. I'm the captain now. There's no way. I can't do it. All right, you guys, before we get into all of the stories, I have to give a big shout out to the sponsor of today's program. First of all, that is going to be my friends over at onenessdrops.com. Now, there is a new, there is a new website for you guys to use. It's actually onenessdrops.com/BOGO Red Pill 78, because for the month of December, that normal 15% discount that you get when you shop at onenessdrops.com, you're now going to get a buy one, get one free. So you're essentially getting 50% off of everything that you purchase as long as you purchase two of them. So if you order their chlorine dioxide water purification kits, you can get another one at 50% off. You will get one for buy one, get one free. Now, you can still use the code REDPILL78 if you just want to get the 15% off single items. But if you want to buy one and get one free, I would say use onenessdrops.com/BOGO Red Pill 78. So great time to stock up on chlorine dioxide water purification kits or their Mullen extract for lung health. This is for an expectorant. It will help relieve your lung congestion. Also, though, their soursop tincture, which is great for cellular regeneration. They also have their pure DMSO. I just saw a pretty stunning testimonial. Someone on X had followed Midwestern Doctor, and he was using DMSO to alleviate his sinusitis symptoms. Now, this man had been blind in his left eye since he was like 5 years old. They had removed his lens because he had a cataract, and that obviously left him unable to focus on anything he couldn't see. Eventually, he could no longer see colors. He could no longer even see light. Well, since he started using the DMSO, it is this man's testimony that he has begun to see color and light in an eye that he had previously been completely blind in previously. Now, he also said, in addition to using it, internally, he is actually putting some on his eyelids. And I just thought that was fascinating. So anyways, we have Eleanor there. She says she actually uses DMSO eye drops. That's great. I had no idea that it was even for use specifically inside the eyes. So regardless, there are a lot of different uses for DMSO. This is a product that is well tolerated. There is a lot of research that's available out there. I've shown you guys that 60 Minutes story that they did back in the 1970s, which showed that people are having incredible success in the variety of different ways they were using it. So definitely check it out. You can also go to my website, redpill78news.com. Go to the news section. There's a blog post about DMSO. There's also a blog post about chlorine dioxide and how you can use that to create clean, fresh drinking water. No matter where you're at, if you've got chlorine dioxide, you can use that to go ahead and take care of all the creepy crawlies, the viruses, the microbes, all of that nasty, nasty stuff that might be inside your water. So onethisdrops.com/BOGO redpill78. Get yourself a buy one, get one free deal. All right, now let us get into the first little video clip that I have for you. President Trump began his latest cabinet meeting. I want to say this is like the 7th, the 8th, or the 9th cabinet meeting, something like that. President Trump has been hitting these like gangbusters, and obviously it gives us all kinds of opportunities to see some pretty incredible clips. Every single one of President Trump's cabinet secretaries, in my opinion, is just killing it. There are a couple that are not nearly as exciting as the other ones, but by and large, I'm having a great time watching the work that they're all doing. First thing President Trump does is to call out the fake news media, because, of course, there's been a lot of conversation recently in the media. They're trying to make President Trump look as if he's got something wrong, either mentally or physically. And it's so hilarious when you juxtapose it with the treatment they gave Joseph Robinette Biden, probably the most infirmed president the United States of America has ever had. That guy, in my opinion, didn't deserve to be anywhere near 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, let alone sitting behind the Resolute desk. So listen to President Trump tell them how it really is.
Recorded, and nobody talks about that anymore. You know, it's crazy. They don't talk about it. You'd think they'd say, well, Trump's done a great job at the border. This country is being destroyed by the border. But you always find something new, like, is he in good health? Biden was great, but is Trump in good health? I sit here, I do 4 news conferences a day. I ask questions from very intelligent lunatics, you people. I give the right answers. There's never a scandal. There's never a problem. I give you answers that solve your little problems. You go back and you can't find anything, but you do stories about Biden was in wonderful health. The guy didn't do a news conference for 8 months. If I go one day, I had one day where I didn't do a news conference, there's something wrong with the president. You people are crazy. I'll let you know when there's something wrong. There will be someday. That's going to happen to all of us. But right now, I think I'm sharper than I was 25 years ago, but who the hell knows? By the way, I took my physical.
He took his physical. It was perfect. As we all know, there is nothing wrong with President Trump. It doesn't matter what happens in the White House. It doesn't matter what the results actually say to the mainstream media. These people are lunatics, just as he said. Their only goal is to try to disparage the president, to try to derail the incredible job that the administration is doing. They will not be successful. They will fail at every juncture. Now, I wanted to give a big shout out to a very brave GOP Senator, Bernie Moreno from Ohio. Now, I know there was a lot of people out there, maybe even some people in Ohio, who wasn't necessarily certain about what kind of a senator Bernie Moreno was going to be. But after this move yesterday, I think he has solidified himself as among the most based in the Congress. He has just introduced legislation to eliminate dual citizenship in the United States of America. That's not just dual citizenship for members of Congress. That is dual citizenship for citizens of the United States. Either you have loyalty to the Constitution, uphold, protect, defend that founding document along with the United States of America, or your loyalties are split. And you can't have loyalty to more than one master. The United States of America must be your primary consideration. So that means that if you are a dual citizen with another nation, well, you're going to have to choose which one of those citizenships you want to go ahead and hold on to and which one you want to get rid of. And nobody in the future will be able to hold those dual citizenship statuses. So Bernie Moreno unveiled the Exclusive Citizenship Act of 2025. This is a sweeping bill that's going to ban dual citizenship among all Americans. It's going to force us to hold nationality in the United States of America, not foreign nationality. You're going to have to pick a single allegiance. If you don't choose a single allegiance, you run the risk of losing your U.S. citizenship. Can you imagine that? If people say, well, I still want to be a citizen of the UK or Israel or Iran, whatever it might be, and they say, guess what? If you want to be a citizen of that country, you're no longer going to be a citizen of this country. So we're going to begin deportation proceedings. Now, Moreno is a unique individual because he is a naturalized American citizen. I've said this before. Many people who come to the United States of America to explicitly seek U.S. citizenship are among some of the most patriotic, the most based individuals. He renounced his Colombian citizenship decades ago so he could become an American. And he framed this bill as a matter of protecting national loyalty and preventing divided loyalties among citizens, which I think for many of you in the audience, this is a prime consideration. We see dual loyalties at play all the time, whether it is a loyalty to Israel, a loyalty to Ukraine, a loyalty to some country in Europe. It doesn't matter. You can't be loyal to the United States of America and at the same time be holding out your arm just in case the people of your other nation need you to call in some chips. Now, he said one of the greatest honors of my life was when I became an American citizen at 18, the first opportunity I could do so. It was an honor to pledge an oath to the allegiance to the United States of America and only the United States of America. This is something that I don't know that everybody is aware because a lot of us didn't have to take the oath. We didn't have to become American citizens. But when you become an American citizen, you pledge exclusive loyalty to the United States of America. There's a lot of people who have taken that oath and they just read the words. It's lip service. Being an American citizen is an honor and a privilege. If you want to be an American, it's all or nothing. It is time to end dual citizenship for good. And I just want to give Bernie Moreno a big thank you and a nice round of applause. Where is my applause button? There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Moreno. Now, according to the bill, existing law has allowed millions of Americans to hold multiple citizenships. This is something Moreno argues creates a conflict of interest and divided loyalties. Under this proposed law, no Americans may simultaneously hold foreign citizenship. Anyone who obtains foreign citizenship after enactment automatically forfeits their U.S. citizenship. Current dual citizens have 1 year to renounce their foreign citizenship, or they will be treated as having voluntarily relinquished their U.S. citizenship. In its findings, Congress explicitly states the following: to preserve the integrity of national citizenship, allegiance to the United States must be undivided. Every single U.S. citizen which holds citizenship in another country would have that 1 year after the enactment of this bill to either formally renounce the foreign citizenship with the foreign government and then notify the U.S. government, or they're going to voluntarily give up that U.S. citizenship. And failure to comply results in an automatic loss of this privilege. Non-compliance is treated the same as voluntarily abandoning U.S. nationality under immigration law. Now, several current members of the 119th Congress are known to be foreign-born. Every single foreign-born member of Congress must be a naturalized U.S. citizen because it is required by U.S. law. Now, there are in the House of Representatives, you've got to have 7 years of U.S. citizenship. In the Senate, you've got to have 9 years of U.S. citizenship. And to be the president or the vice president, you can only be a natural-born U.S. citizen. Now, these are the senators who are foreign-born and naturalized after immigrating. Mazie Hirono, Democrat from Hawaii. She was born in Japan. She immigrated at age 8. She became naturalized. Tammy Duckworth, the Democrat from Illinois. She was born in Thailand. Her mother is Thai. She became a citizen later and was naturalized. Bernie Moreno, he is a Republican from Ohio. Again, born in Colombia, immigrated here as a child, became naturalized. These citizens were born overseas, but they were U.S. citizens from birth, not being naturalized. That includes Michael Bennett, Democrat from Colorado. He was born in India to American parents who were serving abroad. Chris Van Holland, Democrat from Maryland. He was born in Pakistan. Didn't know that. Also American parents who were stationed abroad. But these following representatives were born abroad and then later naturalized. Becca Balint, Democrat from Vermont. She was born in West Germany, was naturalized. Salud Carbajal, Democrat from California, born in Mexico, also naturalized. Sean Casten, Democrat from Illinois, born in Ireland and naturalized. Wow, there's a whole bunch of them. I'm not going to go through all of them. Where's the dual Israeli citizens? They don't mention anything about them. Hold on a second. You know that there's a couple of them in there, guys. Why do they not mention the dual Israeli citizens? Dual U.S. Israeli, because this counts. Citizens in Congress. Because basically, if you are Jewish and you go to Israel on like a pilgrimage or whatever, I believe that the nation of Israel has a like an automatic granting of citizenship. Okay, so members in U.S. politics who hold a dual U.S. Israeli citizen. This is from 2015. This is from a while ago. Okay, so none of those are going to be current. I mean, of course, we have, Jewish members of Congress. That goes back all the way. Oh, Lissa Slotkin's Jewish. I didn't know that. Adam Schiff is also Jewish. I didn't know that. John Ossoff is Jewish. Didn't know that. Jackie Rosen, Brian Schatz, Richard Blumenthal, Michael Bennett, Al Franken. Okay, Bernie Sanders. We got him mixed in with people. Ron White. Wow, there are quite a few. Anyways, it would be interesting to know which of them hold dual citizenship. It's also going to be interesting when it comes to the vote on this, because, certain people are going to frame this as merely an Israeli issue. It's not, okay, but it counts. Anybody who is a citizen of another nation, who is also a citizen of the United States of America, especially if they are serving in the House or the Senate, that needs to be talked about. It needs to be something that's exposed. Now, Bernie Moreno also appeared on War Room earlier today, talking about his initiative to go ahead and get this bill passed through. I can't wait to see who supports it and who doesn't support it, because in order to vote against it, in order to actually campaign against it, they're going to have to make an argument. And I wonder what that argument could be.
It's very, very straightforward. You're either an American citizen or you're a citizen of another country. You can't have dual alliances. You can't have dual allegiances. We pledge allegiance to the flag every day, every morning in the United States Senate. It's crystal clear. I think most Americans are surprised to learn that you can't even have dual citizenship. When I became a U.S. citizen, Steve, by the way, one of the greatest honors and privilege of my life, I swore allegiance to the United States of America and not to the country where I was born. It's pretty straightforward. It's common sense. It should have been done a long time ago. It's very...
All right, so, Sassy Gal, I will pull that scorecard up, Sassy Gal. Marcia says cataract surgery patients should not use DMSO on the eyes. My cloud artificial lenses. Okay, so the man that I was referring to, when he got his original lens out, they did not have artificial lenses to put in. I'm going to be very clear. I'm not recommending anybody that they put DMSO in their eyes or use it in any particular way. I was merely commenting on this one man's experience, not medical advice, but thank you very much for letting us know, Marcia. Thank you, my love. Makes sense to me, too, says the ADL will obviously call this bill anti-Semitic. Well, it's possible. It's very possible that they may, but I also think that they may not want to give up the ghost on which of their members may be serving in Congress who may have
dual citizenship. I mean, one of the reasons it's so hard to like pin down a list, even though there was a list that was created, it's kind of, sketchy whether or not it's fully accurate. It's definitely been reported as not being accurate. But certainly they don't want everybody to know that it's a thing, right? I mean, they don't want people to realize that there may be dual loyalties for people who are serving in Congress, because those are elected representatives and senators of the people of the United States of America that are elected to represent the interests of those people of the United States of America. And if somebody is offering allegiance to another nation, again, I don't care if it's Israel or Ireland, then that's a problem. So we'll see. I think it's good that Bernie Moreno is the one who's putting this bill forward, considering that he relinquished his Colombian citizenship to become an American citizen exclusively. Anyways, let me say thanks to No Thanks Joe, who says, thank you, Lisa and Zach. Happy Taco Tuesday. Looking forward to your great reporting as well as your heartfelt slant on all matters. God bless. Stay safe. Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate you. Now, let me also say thank you to Sean Joe for 3 cookies. Thank you. Appreciate you, buddy. All right. So I think that Bernie Moreno is probably the perfect candidate to throw this legislation forward. And again, I'll be watching it eagerly to see exactly who has a problem with it. And if it turns out it's the usual suspects, well, then, we'll obviously have to talk about that. Now, great news. It looks like the DOJ is, as early as this week, hitting the defendants in the cases that were just recently dropped for the improper usage of the appointments clause, Letitia James and James Comey. It looks like they are going to have new indictments pitted against them as early as this week. Now, a grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia, as y'all know, indicted former FBI Director James Comey in September. He was indicted on 2 counts. There was false statements and obstruction of a congressional proceeding. Now that we have gotten past this appointments clause issue, it is highly likely, in my book, that both Jim Comey and Letitia James, who, of course, was also indicted by a federal grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia, they both may have superseding indictments which eclipse and go beyond the original indictments that were brought against them previously. Because we know the cases are sound. We know that the evidence exists. We know that the crimes were committed, and we know that we have the evidence. So the only thing that is stopping this case from going forward right now is the fact that a signature from an AUSA and an assistant U.S. attorney or I guess it can't be the U.S. attorney itself, because in the Eastern District of Virginia, it's in dispute who that would actually be at this point. So it's going to have to be somebody else. Maybe it'll be Pam Bondi. That would be something else, wouldn't it? Anyways, this was reported late last night by Reuters. It says the U.S. Justice Department, and I want you to keep in mind the conversation we had about leaks yesterday. The U.S. Justice Department is seeking new indictments against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. Letitia Peekaboo James, after a federal judge dismissed both cases last week without prejudice. Very, very important to mention. Now, the department could seek new charges against Comey and James as soon as this week, though the timing is not yet clear. You can read they haven't leaked that information to us yet. Only people speaking to us anonymously in order to discuss non-public department deliberations. Again, this is an illegal leak coming to Reuters. So, Judge Cameron McGowan Curry, that's a Clinton appointee. He's the one that ruled U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan's appointment was a violation of the Appointments Clause. The judge also said that Attorney General Pam Bondi's attempt to ratify Halligan's actions were ineffective. Now, we also spoke about this at the time. Lindsay Halligan could just be appointed as a special prosecutor. Boom. That gives her the authority to file charges against anybody anywhere in the nation. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if they're going to choose a new U.S. attorney. That person would likely have to be voted on by the Senate. These people are totally worthless In my opinion, they couldn't vote their way out of a paper bag, so that's probably not going to be happening. Now, you might remember James Comey and Letitia James both celebrated as if they had gotten away from these charges for good, but as I've already told you, this was merely a question of the appointments clause. James Comey had said a message has to be sent that the President of the United States cannot use the Department of Justice to target his political enemies. Well, James Comey, what happens when his political enemies are actually violating the laws of the United States of America? Because that's what this is really about. It's not about whether or not you were mean to President Trump, or you tried to set him up, or you tried to get him hemmed up in some type of entrapment case. No. This is about you breaking the law. And the charges that were brought against James Comey previously are the low-hanging fruit. It is the bottom of the barrel in terms of the crimes that he's committed. We know that there are grand jury deliberations, which are currently taking place down in the Southern District of Florida. And because those Southern District of Florida grand juries have to do with a much larger criminal conspiracy, we're talking about a RICO case that's likely going to be able to reach back even further in time and bring all of these charges together into this far-reaching investigation. Now, I don't know the date that this is going to happen, but it was merely a technicality. The idea that these charges would be coming sooner rather than later, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out, and I didn't even need an inside source from the DOJ to let me know that that was going to happen. I think everybody assumes that it's going to happen. Now, earlier today, President Trump and the administration fired 8 immigration judges in New York City, in the Big Apple. Now, the action was described by a immigration judge as a Monday afternoon massacre. Good. I love it. The court has been eviscerated, Olivia Cassine, another immigration judge who was fired in November, told the New York Times. It feels like a Monday afternoon massacre. Now, this report comes from the Times. The Trump administration fired 8 immigration judges in New York City on Monday, according to 2 people familiar with the matter. The firings followed an earlier round of job cuts in New York immigration courts and are part of a broader disruption across the country. I would suggest it's not a disruption. It's an attempt to streamline the process and to get rid of judges who are making decisions not based in history, law, tradition, precedent, but are instead making decisions based on a political nature. You can't just keep kicking the can down the road. We need immigration judges who are going to take action swiftly and decisively, because we have too many people here. We got to get rid of them. So the firings were confirmed by an official at the National Association of Immigration Judges. This is a union that represents immigration judges, and a Department of Justice official who, of course, requested anonymity because they were not authorized to speak on the matter. I hope that they figure out who is speaking to the press. The immigration courts are under the control of the Justice Department. Now, all of the judges were dismissed from the immigration court's offices at 26 Federal Plaza. This is a building that houses the New York headquarters of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, and it's become the epicenter of migrant arrests in the city. Read illegal alien arrests in the city. Now, these 8 judges included Amina A. Khan, the assistant chief immigration judge at 26 Federal Plaza. That person supervised, in the past tense, all judges there. Before Monday, about 90 immigration judges had been fired this year across the entire country. We had 6 in New York City. There are about 600 immigration judges nationwide, according to federal officials. Union officials said that 36 of the fired judges had been replaced nationwide, and that includes 2 in New York. We don't need a ton of immigration judges. We just need judges who are going to make the decisions based upon what's best for the country. Now, more than 100 of those immigration judges have either been fired or resigned since President Trump took office Earlier this year, in July, there were another spate of firings. 20 were fired at that time. A few of the federal immigration judges that were recently fired by the administration over email lashed out at President Trump. They did a tearful interview with CBS Evening News. It was kind of funny. We did see some clips here on the show. 3 of those judges, George Pappas, Jennifer Payton, and Carlos Espinosa, spoke to CBS about those terminations. Of course, they were upset. They got fired. I mean, nobody likes to be fired, but they believe, as they claimed, that this was all based on political pressure from the Trump administration because they want to grant motions to dismiss cases. It was arbitrary. It was unfair, George Pappas told CBS News. It's an attack on the rule of law. It's an attack on judges. My email was 3 sentences, Jennifer Payton whined. I had no cause. I had no explanation. We, as judges, we're in fear. We were concerned, Carlos Espinosa said. That makes it very difficult to be impartial. We were not succumbing to that pressure, but it does feel like pressure. Now, Payton also whined that once the illegal alien had left the courtroom, ICE would handcuff them and whisk them away. Well, of course, if the illegal alien is getting taken out of the courtroom, they're going to be arrested by ICE. And yes, they're going to be placed in handcuffs because we've seen what happens. I mean, otherwise they end up running away and then you got to chase them in the street. Maybe you got to tase them. Maybe you got to use a weapon or something like that. And then innocent bystanders may be taken out in the process. I mean, these people deserve to be fired. I'm not sad to see them go. Now, Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, had a little bit of a preview for us on the coming golden age that appears set to hit in January 2026. He said that we're going to see some pretty substantial things, and that includes money in your pocket. Let's take a listen.
Mr. President, it's been a great year on the economy, but the best is yet to come. The tens of trillions of dollars that have come in investment, both the portfolio investment by companies, investment by countries, that it's turning into a CapEx boom for the U.S. Capital expenditures up 15% in history. When CapEx is up, jobs will follow. The one big beautiful bill is incredible, as you said, thanks to your leadership, along with Speaker Johnson, Senator Leader Thune, we had that done on July 4th, which everyone said was impossible. And the great thing about that bill served for the American people, it's for industry, 100% expensing, build your factory here, you can write it off immediately, but you also insisted on the 4 benefits for working people: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, auto deductibility for American cars, and that is retroactive. So as a result, in 2026, we are going to see very substantial tax refunds in the first quarter. So the best way to address the affordability crisis is to give Americans more money in their pockets, which is what this bill has done. We're going to see real wage increases. I think next year is going to be a fantastic year. Taxes, deregulation, energy certainty. That's why everyone with your leadership is coming to America. Bond market had its best year since 2020. Everyone said couldn't be done. So we're going to have growth. We've had 2 4% quarters before the Schumer shutdown. We're going to go back to that. So not only are we going to have great growth, but it's going to be low inflationary growth. And stock market obviously is following, but next year is going to be the year for Main Street as all this kicks in. And you came in, immigration, I called it the 3 I's, immigration, interest rates, and inflation, that were killing the American people. Close the border, the promise kept. Interest rates are down, and 10-year bond, again, best year since 2020, and inflation led by energy prices is going to roll next year. I think it's going to be a fantastic year. That we can look back, be very proud of this year, but I think 2026 is going to be great for the American people. Thanks to you.
Going to be great.
It's going to be great. President Trump is making all of these changes. The administration,
Mr. President, it's been a great year.
Scott Bessent said they have retroactively imparted all of these stimulus plans so that when you do your taxes, it is going to make a difference. And we will have real growth, real money in our accounts, and the announcement that we talked about several months ago, the people behind Dell had agreed to donate something like $25+ million to the United States, which is going to be part of the Trump accounts. Every baby born for the next 5 years is going to have a $1,000 account that is going to be funded by the Trump administration. That will be invested in the stock market. There will also be money from the Dells that goes into that account as well. For the next 18 years, that account is going to be invested. It's going to compound. A financial literacy class, education section will be taught to all of these kids so that they know how to use the markets, so that they know how to invest, so that they know how to budget. And you can also, as a parent, put up to $5,000 per year into that account. Now, on the low end, they are saying that with contributions from families, that account can likely reach, at a minimum, nearly $200,000 by the time that child reaches their 18th birthday. Now, that money can be used for training. It can be used to purchase a house. It can be used for virtually anything. I mean, that money is the kids. You can use it to start a business. You can use it to travel the world. You could quite literally do anything you want. Now, hopefully, because they will be teaching financial literacy to these kids, they will use it to then invest in themselves and to invest in the United States as a market. This is going to be a game changer for children in the coming years. Now, we also had a little bit of information coming from Howard Lutnick. Do you guys remember the deal that the administration made with Intel? Intel, of course, wanted to do some more business setting up manufacturing for chips here in the United States. And President Trump said, okay, but we want 10% of your company. The deal has been in place for the last 3 months. The United States has already brought $40 billion into our coffers as a result of this Intel deal. It is already bearing incredible dividends for the people of the United States.
As I sit here today, I can't be more proud of how you did it, sir. You've created the greatest cabinet. It is a joy to be at this table.
You know, one thing we will mention, so they came to see me from Intel, and they had a problem. I said, look, we'll fix your problem, but I think the United States is entitled to 10% of your company. And the chairman looked at me and he goes, you have a deal. Tell them, how much money have we made since I made that deal?
It's only $40 billion.
$40 billion. We made $40 billion. That was, what, 3 months ago? Does anybody write about it? Nobody writes about it. That's
Nobody.
Okay. Mr.
As I sit here today, I can't be more proud of how you did it, sir. You've created the greatest cabinet. It is a joy.
So for 3 months, $40 billion. That's an additional $160 billion every year at the current rate, if that continues. That's pretty incredible. That is absolutely incredible. And that's just one of the deals that President Trump has made since he came into office. Now, in speaking about all of that money that's going to be in our accounts, President Trump once again at his cabinet meeting discusses how not only are we going to have the biggest tax refund history in American history, because you're going to be getting back a bunch of money because they're going to be paying us, but they're also going to be receiving money on their tax refund checks from all of the tariffs that we've been bringing in. And this ties directly into what President Trump was talking about and has spoken about on numerous occasions, just getting rid of taxes on the American people in general. It's not going to be necessary because we are bringing in so much money in so many different areas.
Next year is projected to be the largest tax refund season ever, and we're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars, and we're going to be giving a nice dividend to the people in addition to reducing debt. Inherited a lot of debt, but it's peanuts compared to the kind of numbers we're talking about. So we're going to be making a dividend to the people, and additionally, we're going to be able to reduce debt. And as time goes by over the next 2, 3, 4 years, those numbers are going to go up. And I believe that at some point in the not too distant future, you won't even have income tax to pay, because the money we're taking in is so great, it's so enormous, that you're not going to have income tax to pay. Whether you get rid of it or just keep it around for fun or have it really low, much lower than it is now. Next year's
keep it around for fun. Nobody wants to keep income taxes around for fun. That is truly the promise of the golden age, where the government of the United States no longer has to leech off the people and steal our hard-earned income. Now, what is happening with our taxes right now? Well, it turns out, thanks to a brand new investigation by the Oversight Committee, it turns out that federal workers have actually been using our tax dollars that we pay them with to, instead of work for us, work for their unions. That's right. They have been taking advantage of the time that they have on the clock for the American people to instead do illegal work for their unions. And that is going to stop.
The average American is likely unaware of the concept of official time. Official time is the amount of time taxpayers pay for federal employees to work on behalf of labor unions rather than their official duty of serving the American public. The simple truth is that while official time may be beneficial to federal employees and union bosses, it comes at the expense of hardworking taxpayers. While it is an open question whether or not taxpayer-funded official time is valuable for the American taxpayer, we should all agree that transparency is necessary for Congress to conduct proper oversight on this issue. President Trump issued an executive order and first-of-its-kind report in 2019 providing this very information. Unfortunately, President Biden issued an executive order repealing that same policy as one of his first acts as president. Following his re-election, President Trump's Office of Personnel Management directed the release of a study on union time in the federal workforce, which was released in August. This report revealed the tremendous amount of taxpayer resources spent funding union activities rather than serving the American people. Dr. Fox's bill would codify reporting requirements necessary to ensure that the transparency and accountability provided by such reports transcends changes in executive branch leadership. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation. I yield to the ranking member for his remarks.
All right. So obviously, the reason Joe Biden rescinded that order is because he wanted the unions to be working for the Democrat Party, and that's what they do. That's got to stop. That's one of the big reasons why we have to clean up the federal bureaucracy. That is happening right now in the background. Now, also coming from another one of my favorites in the House of Representatives, Brandon Gill, is a new act that he has just gotten out of the GOP Oversight Committee. It's called the Equals Act. And what it does is it gets rid of lifetime tenure for federal employees. Now, generally speaking, what happens now is that people don't get hired in the federal government because they do the job best. They get hired because of nepotism, because of relationships that they have with people who already work in the federal bureaucracy. And then once they're there for a period of time, past their probationary time, they're basically in for life. That's why nobody in the federal, well, no, I'm not going to say nobody. That's why many wasteful federal bureaucrats have no concern about doing the job for the American people, because they know that they are essentially off limits. Nobody can touch them. Well, that's going to end with this act from Brandon Gill.
This is a very common sense piece of legislation that simply says that we're going to have a 2-year probationary period for federal workers, during which time we can evaluate them and their managers can determine whether their employment for the federal government makes sense for American taxpayers. We hear that unions are opposed to this, and that's no surprise to anybody. But the reality is that we represent the American people whose tax dollars we are stewarding, not union bosses who are engaged in collective bargaining against the American taxpayer. Once federal workers are outside of this probationary period, they receive virtual tenure. They're incredibly difficult to fire or to get rid of. and the purpose of their employment is to serve the American people, to make federal services better. Our federal programs are not intended to be jobs programs for substandard government workers. So I urge my colleagues to support this common sense bill to ensure that federal workers are in fact meeting basic standards of competency, giving more discretion to managers to ensure that we are stewarding tax dollars appropriately, and as Mr. Biggs said, right-sizing the federal government.
All right, so this is, as Brandon says, a common sense piece of legislation. If we're going to be ending the fraud, waste, and abuse in the federal government, we've got to go about it in a number of different ways. Ending the protections that are in place for federal employees who have no type of accountability once they get in, they are in for life, is a wonderful way to do it. Now, again, in the same way
this is a very common sense.
In the same way that Bernie Moreno's bill to end dual citizenship is simply common sense. This Equals Act is also common sense. Now that it's made it through committee, the House is going to vote on it, and then it will go to the Senate. So to see who supports it and who does not support it, well, that's going to give us a big tip-off as to who is being controlled by the unions. Now, I told a story on Friday about Lisa and I and the kids. We went out and had dinner, and we were eating hibachi, and a guy named Kevin and his wife were sitting at the table with us, and we ended up talking, having a conversation. You guys ever go out for hibachi, then you'll know what I'm talking about. And we had a conversation, and then it came up. Lisa said, you got a show at 10:30, and Kevin was like, you got a show? What do you do? And I was like, I'm a podcaster. And he was like, oh, what's your show? And then I started telling him, and he was like, oh, yeah, I know who you are. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Anyways, so he just messaged me on Twitter. Anyways, yeah, Kevin, if you end up pulling into the show, just wanted to say hello. I just followed you on Twitter. All right. Now, who had sent me the Sassy Gal? Sassy Gal sent me the Unite for Freedom. Let me see. I got to save this. Hold on. Let me actually pull it up over here. All right. So Florida 2024 general election validity scorecard. So it looks like we have an 11.1% error rate. So that is registrations with material error. Obviously, you can't have this as required by the National Voter Registration Act of 1993. We had a 5.9% error rate among votes that were counted for eligible voters. And let's see, the number of votes counted, does that equal the number of voters who voted? We had a difference of 20,931 votes. That is obviously not something that we can allow to happen. Was the number of ballots in error valid according to the Help America Vote Act? Yes, there were 649,626 ballots counted in error, and the allowable machine rate error is only 88. So we have a huge problem down here in Florida. Now, Sassy Gal, I would probably guess and say that what we see here in Florida is probably like better than what you see in other states like, I don't know, Georgia, et cetera, et cetera. But anyways, keep sending me the information from Unite for Freedom, Sassy Gal. I love being able to go over that stuff here. Real quick, before we continue, I have a very brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. And did you guys know that 75% of the Nobel Prize winning ivermectin that helped save Americans during the pandemic is primarily made in Asia? Well, not the wellness companies. Introducing American-made ivermectin. It's safe, trusted, and it's produced right here in the United States of America. For more than 30 years, ivermectin has shown a proven ability to eliminate parasites, and new research also points to potential benefits for skin, immune, and as well as cancer support. Now, most pharmacies charge $5 a tablet, but the wellness company is offering a higher 18-milligram dose for just $3.33 each. So you'll get a 6-month supply designed for 4 21-day cycles, all available at an unbeatable price. You can get your U.S.-made ivermectin today by scanning the QR code you see on screen or heading directly to twc.health/Rumble and use the code RUMBLE to save $30 off plus get free shipping. This is for U.S. residents only. You can also use the link that you might see in the chat as well. Yes, I see somebody in the YouTube chat. Dead people voting, ghost voters. There are all kinds of instances of people on the voter rolls. We are going to talk about this subject a little bit later in the show. But before we do, I wanted to touch in with Miss Alina Habba in New Jersey, because it appears yesterday an appeals court has officially disqualified her from serving as the U.S. attorney for the state of New Jersey. Now, the appeals court is not the end-all, be-all. There very likely would be a higher court to go to, but Alina Habba has now been banned by the appeals court from serving as the U.S. attorney for New Jersey. This is a travesty, as you know. The Third Circuit Court of Appeals was the court that was seeing this case. This is just the latest attempt to assault President Trump and his administration. His desire to put certain legal appointees would be fine if it wasn't for President Trump making these decisions. Now, this is a 3-panel judge appellate court, and they upheld the lower circuit court's findings that the administration had violated the law when they used a series of maneuvers to install Habba in this position after she failed to win Senate support. Under the government's delegation theory, Habba may avoid the gauntlet of presidential appointment and Senate confirmation and serve as the de facto U.S. attorney indefinitely. They said in their decision, this view is so broad that it bypasses the constitutional process entirely. Now, this ruling is a loss for America. Alina Habba has been a warrior for making America great again, for election integrity, and during the various elections that President Trump has been involved in, she's done quite a bit to help make America election secure. This latest news comes just a few months after an Obama judge said that she was not lawfully holding the office of United States Attorney, and it's 1 week after an appeals court ruled that Lindsey Halligan for the Eastern District of Virginia was also illegally appointed, and they dismissed those cases against James Comey and Letitia James. The only people to blame for this problem is the Senate, because they're the ones who should have already voted on both Alina Habba and Lindsey Halligan. We've had ample time for these women, as well as plenty of other individuals that President Trump has put forward for these positions, to be confirmed in the Senate. But you've got people like Chuck Grassley, who appear to seem to like pacifying the Senate Democrats because they have this blue slip custom. This is not even a rule in the Senate. This is just the custom that the senators for the state approve of who the president chooses. This basically gives Democrat senators an ability to veto appointments that are made by the president. President Trump had previously said he would file a lawsuit to prevent Chuck Grassley from blocking the confirmation of Habba. I'm sure that Lindsey Halligan would come into that as well. He said, I have a constitutional right to appoint judges and U.S. attorneys, but that right has been completely taken from me in states that have just one Democrat U.S. senator. It's because of an old and outdated custom known as blue slip. Senator Chuck Grassley of the great state of Iowa refuses to overturn, even though the Democrats, including crooked Joe Biden, twice have done so on numerous occasions. I've said this on so many different times. They got to take the gloves off. It is well past the time to adhere to rules and customs and formalities when we're dealing with these people, because they want us eliminated. If we're going to pass our agenda, if we're going to successfully remake the nation in the image of the Golden Age, making America great again for everyone, then we've got to have law and order on the table. And if the Democrats are in control of who is appointed by the president, well, they're only going to appoint people who have been trained and paid for by George Soros and the Open Society Foundation, or people who are going to allow lawlessness to reign supreme because people won't be prosecuted and the wrong people will end up being prosecuted. So this is a breaking story. I haven't seen any updates on what they plan to do, but I can only hope against hope that people like Chuck Grassley come to their senses. We should have had a U.S. attorney in the state of New Jersey by this point. We should have had a whole bunch of shit that was already taken care of. But for some reason, they continue to allow this garbage to continue. All right. Also, Q Patriot Angel over on Rumble says, I love the news on the babies today. It only makes me wish I was 25 again. Make some babies, Gen Zers. Yes, absolutely. I saw another really interesting video from, who is it? Andrew something or other. He's a guy on YouTube that I follow. He's a lawyer. Honey, who is the guy on YouTube that he lives in Asia? He's got the hair. And he does like the fast legal bites. Yes, because no Republicans have balls. At least some of them don't have balls. The ones who are making the freaking decisions on this stuff. Anyways, let's talk about the war crime PSYOP that we were discussing yesterday. Because a really interesting thing was pointed out. You know, we've talked on a number of occasions about President Barack Hussein Obama running drone strikes on American citizens in foreign countries, killing men, women, children, innocents. Nobody batted an eyelash. Oh, it's war. They're trying to kill terrorists. So maybe the intel was bad and maybe they drone struck some farmers, some goat herders. But, you know, what are you going to do? It's war, right? Nobody gave a shit. Nobody cared, especially in the mainstream media. But the Biden administration did this as well. Back in 2021, they sent a drone strike into Afghanistan, and they killed a whole bunch of innocent people. They didn't get a single terrorist. They had bad intel. And this is particularly notable in light of this recent PSYOP that Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump have committed war crimes, because we have been striking these narco-terrorist transnational criminals in the Caribbean Sea who are trying to bring cocaine and fentanyl into the United States of America. They basically are attempting to manufacture a scandal out of thin air. It would be the next impeachment hoax that they would use against him. And obviously, they want to get rid of Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth, I think, has real balls, and he is truly transforming the Pentagon. So they're hyper-focusing on this story that the Washington Post published about this so-called second strike on a narco-terrorist boat where 2 people were alive in the water. Even if they were alive, they would have been very close to being dead. I don't know that anybody would have wanted to make it out of a Hellfire drone missile strike on their boat. If they had made it out of something like that, they probably would have lost an arm. They would have been completely badly burned. Their skin would have been peeling off, and they probably would have had a hole in their head. But that's neither here nor there, because I think the whole thing was fake. But Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, he was part of that seditious 6. It looks like he may be planning to run for president in 2028 on the Democrat ticket. And there's a reason that I think they came up with that video. Obviously, they wanted to sow dissent among the rank and file in the military. But I think that those individuals were also setting themselves up for a potential power grab in the future. And Mark Kelly is unique because he, as we know, the Pentagon is now investigating him. He can be recalled to active duty and he can be brought before a military tribunal. But all of the people who are involved in this war crimes PSYOP are just very conveniently overlooking anything similar that was verified that happened during the Obama or the Biden years. This particular incident in 2021 took place where the Biden administration sent a drone strike into Afghanistan, and they killed 10 innocent civilians. Like 7 of them were children. It was a drone strike, and it was after we had pulled out of the airbase at total complete shit show with the terror attack taking place with ISIS blowing up American servicemen, just murdering people, killing Afghan civilians, people hanging off of planes, falling down, getting frozen on the outside of the aircraft. And then, of course, we bring these CIA-trained kill squads here to the United States so they can be activated at some point in the future. All of it kind of coming to a head right now. But nobody in the media said boo when the Biden administration drone struck a group of 10 innocent Afghan goat herders, 7 of them being children, blown to bits, an entire family taken out. Nobody was punished. Nobody claimed that the Biden administration had committed a war crime, although that's something that I think you could make a legitimate argument for. So John Kirby, who was one of the talking heads for the Biden administration at that time, appeared on MSNBC, and he did talk about it. Let's hear what he had to say. What was the talking points of the administration at that time?
How does it strike you that no one is held accountable? Because I know how it strikes a lot of people around the world that you can get away with murder and nobody's punished for it.
I do understand that. We appreciate that. Not everybody's going to support this decision. What I can tell you is we looked at this thing very, very comprehensively. And again, we acknowledge that there were procedural breakdowns. Processes were not...
Marine in the Woods says, Zach, I was the head of security for Bagram in 1516. Oh, bro, send me an email. redpill78@proton.me. I'd love to talk to you. Thank you for your service.
Executed the way they should have been, but it doesn't necessarily indicate that that an individual or individuals have to be held to account for that. But look,
is there discipline inside the Pentagon at all? I mean, maybe there are no charges brought up, but is anyone demoted or disciplined for what happened that day?
What we are going to do, there's no...
The answer's no. There was no discipline because they didn't really care about that.
There's not going to be individual discipline as a result of this, Willie. But what we are going to do is learn from this, and we're going to enact and improve our procedures and our processes to try to make sure this doesn't happen again.
We're not going to kill innocent children. That's, the long and the short of it there. So nobody was reprimanded from that drone strike in Kabul, killing 10 innocent Afghan civilians, 7 of them children. That strike was launched 3 days after that suicide bombing I just mentioned outside the Kabul airport that killed 13, needlessly killed 13 military members and scores of Afghan citizens. Remember when Joe Biden went to the hospital to speak with some of the survivors, and he tried to shake that soldier's hand, and the soldier said, "Sir, I don't have an arm." And Joe Biden was just like, "Oh, oops, sorry about that. Like, you dumb son of a bitch." Anyways, the intelligence that we had at the time ended up proving true. It was ISIS-K, which is an offshoot of ISIS, which was an offshoot of the Obama administration, essentially. But the review found that this incident did not violate any laws of war, but it did leave decisions on punishments up to the commanders. The 2 senior commanders that were in charge were General Kenneth McKenzie, he was the head of U.S. CENTCOM, and General Richard Clark, head of U.S. Special Operations Command. Both of them recommended no punishment for the troops involved. Now, according to defense officials, the current Secretary of Defense at that time, Lloyd Austin, also agreed with that. Now, John Kirby, again, confirmed that nobody was getting in trouble for that. It is kind of surprising that in any respect, MSNBC pushed back on the, needless murder of innocent civilians at that time. But it was ultimately a mistake, all right? And really, mistakes are going to happen in war. But it is fundamentally different for a drone strike on a group of children versus a drone strike on narco traffickers, which are going to bring poison into the United States. Now, just to juxtapose everything we've seen over the last couple of weeks, we're going to take a look at Mark Kelly questioning General Kenneth McKenzie after this incident took place. This was September 28th, 2021, so about a month after. And Mark Kelly very graciously questions General McKenzie about what happened. Hey, what can you tell us about the murder of these children? Doesn't accuse him of having committed war crimes. Not at all.
You can't go into much detail about the analysis that led to the August 28th drone strike in Kabul in this open setting, but I would like to note my serious concerns and give you the opportunity to make any comment on how the American people can know that the military will be able to adequately assess targets before conducting future strikes and operations, even as we have even fewer local intelligence and surveillance resources to leverage.
Senator, again, the matter's under investigation, but what I can tell you broadly, and to restate some things I've said earlier, I am responsible for that. It happened in my area of responsibility, so I'm the responsible officer for that strike. Moreover, I was under no pressure, and no one in my chain of command below me was under any pressure to take that strike. We acted based on the intelligence read that we saw on the ground. We acted several times on intelligence that we saw, and we were successful in other occasions in preventing attacks. This time, tragically, we were wrong. And you're right to note that as we go forward and our ability to create what we call the ecosystem that allows you to see what's going on the ground and put all that together, it's going to get a lot harder to do that, particularly in places like Afghanistan. But I can share a little more with you later.
Well, thank you, General.
Thank you, Senator Kelly.
The intelligence on the ground. Obviously, the intelligence on the ground was flawed because of the way that Joe Biden had so disastrously pulled us out of Afghanistan, essentially leaving nothing behind but $80 billion in military equipment to then be scooped up by the very people we had been fighting. So I can understand that people had a bit of a trigger finger at that time, but they would have had ground intelligence to know that these were not people that we were supposed to be killing if it hadn't have been for the decision that Joe Biden made. Now, I do not blame the drone operators. I don't blame any of the service members. You know, I mean, this was a failure from the top down. But my ultimate point here is that Mark Kelly didn't care. He didn't push back on any of this, and he certainly didn't accuse anybody of having committed war crimes. Now, President Trump, just to give you guys a little bit more context on what it is we're actually doing in the Caribbean, President Trump is questioned about the drone strikes on these Venezuelan drug traffickers. Take a listen.
We lost last year. I think it was more than that, but, you know, people don't like saying it because they always said 100,000, 115,000, numbers we've been hearing for years. So we lost last year more than 200,000 people, dead people, ruined families beyond the 200,000. And those 200,000, that family will never be the same. But these people have killed over 200,000 people, actually killed over 200,000 people last year. And those numbers are down. Those numbers are down. They're way down. And they're down because we're doing these strikes. And we're going to start doing those strikes on land, too. You know, the land is much easier. It's much easier. And we know the routes they take. We know everything about them. We know where they live. We know where the bad ones live. And we're going to start that very soon, too.
Mr. President, thank you so much, Mr. President.
You know what? When we start that, we're going to drive those numbers down so low. And then you're going to have families be able to live without the fear of their son or daughter just having a pill to have a little fun and ending up dying within a period of 60 seconds, right? No, we're not going to let that happen. We're not going to let it continue to happen. What Biden did to this country by allowing all these people, and I call them animals in many cases, I think they're animals, to come into our country and destroy our country and let all those drugs pour in. Let people just walk across the border like it was nothing. You look at them, a lot of them, you know, and you say, oh, let's not discriminate. I'm not talking about color. I'm just talking about you look into the eyes of some of these people. We're smart. And you see a killer. Come on in. Just come on in. 11,888 murderers. Many of them committed more than one murder. He allowed them into our country, totally unvetted, totally unchecked. But he also allowed drugs to come in at record numbers, and hundreds of thousands of people a year died. And we're taking those son of a bitches out.
We're taking those son of a bitches out. This is not simply about blowing up some boats in the Caribbean. This is about stopping the flow of drugs from a transnational criminal cartel of death merchants into the United States of America. Drugs alone kill between 100 to 200,000 people per year in the United States. As President Trump said, the incalculable loss is truly felt among the families of the people who are left behind. If anyone here has ever had to deal with addiction to either drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be, then you understand just how devastating it can be. Either if you're a family member of somebody who is tragically addicted, or if you yourself have overcome addiction, as I have, you understand just what's at stake. And I am 100% in favor of everything the administration is doing to stop the flow of narcotics before they get to our border. Because once they're here in our country, it's a big effing country. There's a whole lot of places for people to hide. There's a whole lot of rat lines that have already been set up. And once the drugs get here, they're going to get into the bodies and they're going to infect the minds of Americans. And those people are going to have a very bleak future ahead of them. Many of those people are going to be lost for the rest of their lives. Some of those people are going to think that the only way out is to just end their lives altogether. That is unacceptable. This is what people like Mark Kelly and Alyssa Slotkin and all of the Democrats who are crowing about war crimes in the Caribbean are trying to protect. They want America to be a place of devastation and depression where horrific circumstances are a way of life, where your mother, your father, your brother, your son, your daughter might one day just end up dead on the bathroom floor. Well, hey, sorry, drugs are drugs. It's just going to happen. We might as well let it happen, and it's a war crime if we blow the dirty sons of bitches up in the Caribbean before they have an opportunity to bring those drugs to the United States of America. Not to mention a whole bunch of money that's going to be brought with those drugs, which likely ends up into the political action committees of people like those who are supporting the continued allowance of those boats to come into the United States of America. Absolutely unacceptable. Now, President Trump, Mark Kelly gave a press conference because he's starting to feel the pressure. I showed you that truth from President Trump yesterday, where President Trump addresses the Secretary of the Navy about recalling Mark Kelly, bringing him back in. He said, do the right thing. Let's get Mark Kelly back in there. Let's take a look at him. Let's see what's going on. Well, Mark Kelly is now claiming that President Trump is threatening to kill him. He gave a press conference yesterday, and you can tell that the pressure is really, really getting to Mark. He understands what's at stake. He understands that there is a very real possibility that this investigation by the Pentagon might bring him back, and it might put him into a position to have everything taken from him. Let's take a look at one of these statements. I've got two statements from Mark. We're going to go ahead and take a listen. As long as this works. Okay, here we go.
President Trump is trying to silence me, threatening to kill me for saying what is true. And he sent his Secretary of Defense after me. And it's not going to work. Here's how we got here. A week and a half ago, Senator Slotkin and I, along with others who also served in the military and the intelligence communities, we released a video with a simple message to service members that they must refuse illegal orders. Nothing was controversial about that. Everyone must follow the law. No one may break the law. This is pretty basic stuff. Seeing that video, here's how any other president would have responded.
All right. It doesn't matter what Mark Kelly thinks the president should do. And I will be very honest with you. We've talked about this on many occasions. I love President Trump because he's not your average dime store politician. He's not simply going to do the Obama route and speak in an exaggerated theatrical voice and talk a bunch of words that sum up to little to nothing. President Trump is going to tell it like it is. He's going to say it like a real person would. We're killing the sons of bitches. I like that. I respect that. What I don't respect is seditious sons of bitches like Mark Kelly, who make a video under the pretense of his respect and position within the United States military, telling rank and file soldiers that they should take a look at every single thing they're told to examine whether or not it's an illegal order. There's already a process. There's already training that every single military unit goes through. They know the difference between a legal order and an illegal order. They understand the Uniform Code of Military Justice. They understand exactly what they're doing on a daily basis. They are fighting to preserve not only the Constitution, protect and defend the Constitution, but to preserve the national sovereignty and the safety of the United States of America and her citizens. Mark Kelly and the Seditious Six want to sow division among the brain-rotted TDS-suffering minority within the military, who might one day jump aboard their bandwagon and say, enough is enough. We're not going to follow President Trump's illegal orders. We're going to take a stand, because they don't even understand what an illegal order is. An illegal order to them is simply what they don't like ideologically.
Now, he also had a real problem with Pete Hegseth posting the Franklin the Turtle book, which was posted on 4chan. Hang on. If I actually haven't shown that. Maybe I want to see if it's in. Yeah, here it is. Franklin targets narco terrorists for your Christmas wish list. Excuse me. I love this as well. I'm totally cool with Pete Hegseth posting memes from the boards on X and having a little bit of fun with this, because it's not just, the truth. Okay, we are targeting narco terrorists. Totally cool with that. But he also knows that it gets into the brainstem of those leftists who are totally against these types of things happening. Not because they love narco terrorists per se, but because they love preserving the criminal rat lines which are padding their pockets. We're talking about very corrupt individuals who have embedded themselves inside every facet of the United States government. Now take a look. Here is Mark Kelly crying about Pete Hegseth posting the Franklin book. Now,
He's putting out on the internet turtles with rocket-propelled grenades. Have you seen this? This is the Secretary of Defense. This is not a serious person. He should have been fired after Signalgate.
I think it's pretty based, personally. I think it's pretty based. I'm totally, again, in favor of it. Now, another thing that these people hate is that the brand new Pentagon press corps met for the very first time today. This is made up of people like Matt Gaetz. I believe James O'Keefe was also there. Some pretty wonderful people out there in the independent media world. Now, the press secretary for the Department of War, her name is Kingsley Wilson. She was running this press conference, and she was asked about the allegations of misconduct against Senator Mark Kelly and the idea that he may be recalled and court-martialed. This is also probably making him sweat.
So you're correct. The Department of War received serious allegations of misconduct against Senator Mark Kelly, and in accordance with the Uniform Code of Military Justice and other applicable recommendations and regulations, we're doing a thorough review of all of these allegations. And the Secretary of War has tasked the Secretary of the Navy, John Phelan, with doing a thorough review, looking into all of these allegations, and providing him an update on December 10th. So we will have more information to
December 10th. It's the 2nd today. So 8 days from now, they're going to have a recommendation as to whether or not Mark Kelly can be recalled and court-martialed. So the closer we get to December 10th, the more squirrely I think Mark Kelly is going to get.
On that, but I would just add that this despicable video that Mark Kelly participated in with the Seditious Six was a politically motivated influence operation that was
run by the CIA.
Attempt to undermine the chain of command to sow distrust and division in our armed forces. That is absolutely ridiculous, and it puts our warfighters at risk. And again, he doubled down on the Sunday shows. I don't know if you all saw him on the Sunday shows, but he basically insinuated that service members who do not defy President Trump's orders could face potential prosecution in the future when Democrats are back in power. He even called our troops and likened them to those of the Russian military. This is totally disgraceful from an elected official, and the department takes it very seriously, and that is why we have launched this review.
I think Mark Kelly is officially foobarred. Like, this is not going to go well for him. I eagerly anticipate, and it's going to get worse. Because you remember the war crimes PSYOP story? Well, guess what? Now we have infighting within the fake news media itself. This is hilarious. The New York Times has fact-checked the Washington Post, who was the purveyor of this original story. And it appears that it is totally fake. Not only did we already know that, but it's hilarious to me that the New York Times is exposing the Washington Post. So this narrative that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth ordered the killing of 2 survivors on this boat in the Caribbean has officially been debunked by a major fake news media source, which, of course, has revealed the full story behind the attack.
Now, President Trump had already posted the footage. We actually played this footage here on September 2nd, and he said, please let this serve as a notice to anybody even thinking about bringing drugs into the United States of America. Beware. The strike in question is the first in dozens of drug boats in the Caribbean Sea, which have killed nearly 100 drug traffickers, good riddance to bad rubbish, and greatly reduced the number and amount of drugs coming into the United States of America. Now, the Washington Post published this article. They used anonymous sources. They likened this SEAL Team 6-led operation to murder and a war crime, basically accusing Pete Hegseth and President Trump of being a war criminal. And who wants to be a Slobodan Milosevic, guys? Well, they said this strike was in direct response to Hegseth's order to kill everybody on board the vessel. Representative Seth Moulton, a Democrat from Massachusetts, described the operation as blatantly illegal because he was in the room, right? He also added, mark my words, it may take some time, but Americans will be prosecuted for this, either as a war crime or outright murder. Well, now it's been totally debunked. The Post is now in legal hot water thanks to the New York Times checking their facts. According to the Times, while Hegseth actually ordered the September strike on this drug-running vessel in the Caribbean Sea, he did not specify what should happen if any survivors remained. And moreover, his order was not related to footage showing survivors on the boat. Now, although the Washington Post may have had several anonymous sources, likely meaning totally made up people that gave quotes to a fake news reporter at the Washington Post, the New York Times has 5 of their own U.S. officials. They spoke separately, also on the condition of anonymity, to discuss this sensitive matter because it is under investigation. But Pete Hegseth, ahead of this September 2nd, had ordered a strike that would kill the people on the boat and destroy the vessel and its purported cargo of drugs. Every single official that the New York Times spoke with, Mr. Hegseth's directive did not specifically address what should happen if a first missile turned out to not fully accomplish all of those things. And the officials also said his order was not responsive to any surveillance footage. He wasn't sitting there watching it live like Hillary Clinton watching Osama bin Laden. Remember that? That fake picture of her and Obama and everybody else huddled around the war room like, oh, my God, did they just shoot Osama bin Laden in the brain? Did they just dome him and then carry his body out into the front yard? Obviously, that didn't even happen either. But the official said his order was not responsive to any footage there and that at least 2 people on the boat survived the first blast. Admiral Bradley ordered the initial missile strike and then several follow-up strikes that killed the initial survivors and sank the disabled boat. As the operation unfolded, they said, Mr. Hegseth wasn't involved. He did not give any orders to Admiral Bradley. How are we living in 2025 where the New York Times is now actually telling the truth? What type of world have we turned into where the New York Times has to fact check the fake news Washington Post? Absolutely hilarious. I don't even know how we got here. But take a look at this. Pete Hegseth was also asked about these drone strikes in the course of this meeting today, where President Trump and the cabinet came together. Let's go ahead and take a listen, because just like he has done in the past, he is honest, he is forthright. Just like President Trump, he goes hard. He does not give a shit.
As I've said, and I'll say again, we've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people. And Joe Biden tried to approach it with kid gloves and allowed them to come across the border. Cartels take over community, 20 million people, hundreds of thousands of Americans poisoned. And President Trump said, no, we're taking the gloves off. We're taking the fight to these designated terror organizations, and that's exactly what we're doing. So we're stopping the drugs, we're striking the boats, we're defeating narco terrorists, and we're standing...
And you may say one thing, that drugs coming in through the sea by sea are down 91%. And I don't know who the 9% is.
I'm not sure either, sir.
But down 91% by sea.
We've had a bit of a pause because it's hard to find boats to strike right now. Which is the entire point, right? Deterrence has to matter, not arrest and hand over and then do it again, the rinse and repeat approach of previous administrations. This is meant to get after that approach. And I will just end by saying, as President Trump always has our back, we always have the back of our commanders.
Amen.
Who are making decisions in difficult situations than we do in this case and all these strikes. They're making judgment calls and ensuring that they defend the American people. They've done the right things. We'll keep doing that, and we have their backs, Mr. President.
Good job. Thank you very much.
All right. So, as Pete Hegseth said there, drug boat routes are down 91%. 91% since they started these strikes. That is results. Okay. Now, as President Trump said, they are starting to come in more by land. And he also mentioned in that earlier clip that it doesn't matter which country they're in. If they are bringing drugs to the United States by land, they are now submitting themselves to strikes on that land. So expect to see this coming up in a much more impressive way. All right, let me just check something over here. And let's see. Looking at my chats real quick. Okay. Okay. All right. So continuing on to the next story. CNN is also very upset because the White House has a new initiative. The Trump administration has officially declared open season on fake news. Over the weekend, the White House rolled out a brand new transparency tool. It's called the Media Bias Tracker. This is now a new permanent fixture at whitehouse.gov. On their website, what it is it's designed to chronicle the nonstop lies, the distortions, the hoaxes, and all of the misleading narratives that are pumped out daily by the fake news media. The same media outlets that have spent the last 8 years obsessively targeting and pursuing President Donald Trump and anybody who's in his orbit. This tracker is introduced as a record of the media's false and misleading stories that have been flagged by the White House. It's so funny because for years, the left have had their own fact-checking websites where they include myself or other people in the independent media, and they will attempt to denigrate our reporting or say that things we're saying are not real, even though they oftentimes end up being very real, and they are proven such perhaps only with time. But the mainstream fake news media so often will perpetuate lies, and nobody is there to check them on it. So at the top of the leaderboard, as of course you might expect, is the Washington Post. This is, of course, a publication that falsely claims to engage in rigorous journalism, while at the same time they pump out some of the greatest stories of total fake news dregs over the last decade. Following very closely behind them are the former MSNBC, now MS Now, still the exact same operation. Nothing has changed behind the scenes. After them, you have CBS News, then you have CNN, then the New York Times, then Politico, and then the Wall Street Journal. There's also a section which has a video showing Democrat Senators Mark Kelly, Alyssa Slotkin, and the representatives labeling their recent attempt to incite disobedience in the military as seditious. It can only be phrased that way. Now, we're waiting to see what happens with Mark Kelly's Department of War investigation. As you know, we've already talked about it, but Mark Kelly has literally violated a number of federal laws. That includes 18 U.S.C. 2387. That particular law specifically prohibits any actions that are intended to interfere with the loyalty, morale, or good order and discipline of the armed forces. All of those people are guilty of those things. But Mark Kelly is unique because he can be recalled to active order. So Brian Stelter is very upset about this. Very upset that he and his ilk are being called out for reporting things that are simply not true. Let's take a look very briefly at Brian Stelter's crash out.
Has ramped up his attacks on journalists in recent weeks. This isn't a new strategy for him. We have seen this. What is this all about? Is this just about controlling the narrative?
To delegitimize the media. I would say it's to delegitimize the media, Jessica.
Ryan, the thing is, you guys have already delegitimized yourself. Nobody trusts the mainstream media. The only people who watch the mainstream media, by and large, are far left-wing Democrats. And even among those people,
a big percentage of those individuals also don't trust the mainstream media. I would say the majority of America trusts the media less than they trust Congress. And that's difficult to do because Congress doesn't do much of anything. But the mainstream media, you know, every time you turn it on, you're going to get lied to. That includes you, Brian. I mean, you have done a wonderful job of doing my job for me. All you have to do is open your mouth and lie, producing fake news hit pieces day in and day out, and everybody can see it with their own eyes.
This media bias monitor is being produced at taxpayer expense. It's
not like it's a huge expense. All they have to do is go on X, go on your own feeds, and update the website. I mean, I can tell you, as a former web developer and designer, it takes precious little time to update a website if all you're doing is updating a graphic or two or a headline pointing out a fake news narrative such as yourself.
A featured part of the White House website, and it's about trying to tarnish and demean various news outlets as well as media outlets that have nothing to do with the news business. For example, one of the targets of this White House webpage is Whoopi Goldberg, the entertainer who co-hosts The View. So it's about targeting perceived liberals, perceived enemies, and as always, trying to attack.
Perceived? I mean, I don't know that there's any perceptions that have to come into play. I mean, it's observational.
The messenger. But here's what happens whenever the president or his aides go after a journalist or go after a news outlet. It makes people wonder what the fuss is about, what the controversy is about. The other day, the president called a New York Times reporter ugly. It made more people want to read the
She was ugly, though. I mean,
story and find out what the story was about. That story was about the president's stamina and how he's less visible than he was during Trump 1.0 back in 2017.
There we go with another fake news narrative. I would say President Trump is more visible in this administration than he was in his first administration. Not to mention he's also traveling the world and ending wars from here to Timbuktu at the same time that he's saving the country and bringing investments in the trillions of dollars back to the United States of America, encouraging young families to have babies and settle down, to start families and get jobs, go through vocational training. I mean, we're going to have a lot of jobs that we have to fill. President Trump has done an incredible job. And if you're not allowing yourself to see that, then I would suggest you look deep within yourself and ask, what is missing? What is preventing me from being able to see the good that is happening in this world? As somebody who has paid attention to politics, corruption, the deep state for virtually my entire life. I'm 47 years old, and for basically the last 40 years, I have watched corrupt administration after corrupt administration siphon the joy and the wealth out of the pockets of the American people, ingratiate their friends, even their enemies in the political sphere, because nobody's really enemies in politics. They just have characters they play for the cameras. But these people are corrupt as hell. And they have made life nearly intolerable for millions upon millions of Americans. President Trump is reversing all of that.
When he called a reporter at CBS stupid the other day, I wanted to know, what was that story about? The reporter was asking about Afghans coming to the U.S. and the vetting process of the U.S. government.
Okay. and we actually saw that clip. Anyways, I'm not going to continue with Brian Stelter because everybody knows he is a moron just as much as that reporter who was asking Trump about why he blamed the Biden administration for Afghans who are committing terror to come into the United States. Well, that's no shit, Sherlock, an easy one that you can answer because they came in under the Biden administration. Now, somebody had dropped this into the chat a few minutes ago. President Trump very shortly, about 40 minutes ago, posted this once again on Truth Social. Any and all documents, proclamations, executive orders, memorandums, or contracts signed by order of the now infamous and unauthorized autopen within the administration of Joseph R. Biden Jr. are hereby null, void, and of no further force or effect. He's already stated this, but he is doing it again. Anyone receiving pardons or commutations or any other legal documents so signed, please be advised that said document has been fully and completely terminated and is of no legal effect. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, what would really get my jimmies rustling here
is if those people in the Biden administration and the sphere of the deep state who had received pardons in the waning days of the Biden administration, if they were then very quickly brought up on charges for crimes that they committed at any point during the last 4 years or more. Let's see it. Let's put the pedal to the metal, POTUS, and let's actually put this directive into use. Now, Scott Bessent, you know what, actually, this was a shorter version of the clip we watched earlier, so we don't need to watch that again. But also from the cabinet meeting from earlier today, we have a couple of different updates related to the USDA, SNAP, benefits, and Brooke Rollins had a wonderful, wonderful announcement. 800,000 people have been removed from the SNAP benefit rolls. That is a tremendous savings for the American people. Let's take a listen to Secretary Rollins.
Thing which became very much a part of the national conversation during the Democrat shutdown was SNAP reform, food stamp reform. When all of America saw what so many of us know and have been working on, but when you have so much rampant fraud in a program that 42 million Americans participate in, now a big good piece of news that I hope is written about, since you became president, about 800,000 of those 42 million have moved off of food stamps, which is hopefully the plan, with better jobs, higher wages, etc. But still, when we found 186,000 dead people's Social Security numbers being used, 500,000 people receiving benefits more than twice. We had a couple of people receiving benefits in 6 states.
Wow.
In February of this year, we asked for all the states for the first time to turn over their data to the federal government, to let the USDA partner with them to root out this fraud, to make sure that those who really need food stamps are getting them, but also to ensure that the American taxpayer is protected.
6 states, 800,000 individuals removed from the rolls. I don't know how many of those people were getting food stamps in multiple locations, but obviously that is a big deal. Now, as I told you yesterday, the requirements for SNAP have also now changed. So undoubtedly, many, many more people are going to be moved off of the food stamp program because they're going to be getting jobs, or they're going to be just refusing to do the work that is required to continue to qualify for food stamps. Now, Brooke Rollins mentioned those 21 states. She mentioned the states. They requested data from all of them. But you'll probably remember there were some states that were holding out, 21 of them to be exact, who did not want to give the USDA the information about who in their states were receiving federal SNAP benefits. Well, guess what? They are all states that are controlled by Democrats. This is part of an anti-fraud requirement that the federal government has rolled out. For the states that did comply, there was a finding of 186,000 dead people with Social Security numbers that should have been wiped that were being used to acquire SNAP benefits. As she said, there were people who were receiving benefits in multiple places. That was 500,000 people that were receiving benefits more than twice, and multiple people who were receiving benefits in 6 states. In February, for the first time ever, the federal government had asked for all of the rolls to be turned over so that they could do an exhaustive investigation on the fraud. We had 29 red states say yes. We had 21 blue states say no. So here's the kicker. As of next week, there will be a full stop cutoff of federal funds going to the states who still refuse to hand over their data so that the government can do the fraud audit. Those states are California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Vermont, Virginia, and Washington. Every one of those states are now going to have their benefits cut off by USDA because they refuse to assist in the investigation to identify fraud.
We have so much great things to talk about at USDA, but the third thing, which became very much a part of the national conversation during the Democrat shutdown, was SNAP reform, food stamp reform. When all of America saw what so many of us know and have been working on, But when you have so much rampant fraud in a program that 42 million Americans participate in, now big good piece of news that I hope is written about, since you became president, about 800,000 of those 42 million have moved off of food stamps, which is hopefully the plan. First time to turn over their data to the federal government, to let the USDA partner with them to root out this fraud, to make sure that those who really need food stamps are getting them, but also to ensure that the American taxpayer is protected. 21 states said yes, not surprised. 29 states said yes, not surprisingly, the red states, and that's where all of that data, that fraud comes from. But 21 states, including...
Isn't that stunning? All of the fraud previously mentioned was taking place in Republican states. Imagine how much more fraud is taking place in those other 21 blue states that refuse to open their books.
Including California, New York, and Minnesota, the blue states, continue to say no. So as of next week, we have begun and will begin to stop moving federal funds into those states until they comply and they tell us and allow us to partner with them to root out this fraud and to protect the American taxpayer. As Joe Biden was working to buy an election a year ago, he increased food stamp program funding by 40%. So now as we continue to roll that back. So the partnership in Making America Healthy Again is also in food stamps, but a lot of what Bobby and I are doing together is really remarkable. But again, just gratitude and joy.
Anyways, it's just the beginning, my friends. We are very early on, but we are about to get to the point where the pedal hits the metal, where the ass meets the pavement. So the USDA is also reviewing every single program that is under their purview. This is designed not only to root out the fraud, to get rid of the dead people who are receiving benefits of any kind, but of course, to ensure that only American citizens are receiving these benefits. So right now, they are in the process of weeding out all illegal aliens from programs that are operated under the USDA. That includes, but is not limited to, the SNAP program. She said, at the direction of POTUS, we are going to be rooting out all USDA programs to ensure only legal citizens are receiving the benefits. Earlier this year, USDA put states on notice, reminding them illegal immigrants and certain non-citizens cannot receive SNAP benefits. But we already know in many of these blue states, they were automatically giving these benefits to illegal aliens. So the states that have not turned over their data are the ones that are going to feel the pinch the most. These are going to be the sanctuary states. These are going to be the places where most of these illegal aliens are currently living. So this will be a big news story coming out here in the very near future, and I can only imagine how this is going to cause panic. It also may lead to people choosing to self-deport, because once they're no longer able to acquire these benefits, they are going to have to find something else to do with themselves, and a free airplane ticket back to their country of origin is going to look pretty enticing at that point. All right, now before we move on to the next story, I have a brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys have probably noticed Rumble is growing fast. It's not slowing down. They're building a real alternative to big tech that puts creators first and actually protects free speech. And now there's Rumble Premium. It's an easy way to upgrade your experience. With Premium, you get ad-free viewing across the platform, no pre-rolls, no interruptions, just the content that you came for. Plus, Premium members unlock exclusive content like bonus videos, behind-the-scenes drops, and even more from your favorite creators. And right now, Rumble is offering $10 off an annual subscription to Rumble Premium. Just go to rumble.com/premium and use the promo code STUDIO at checkout. That's rumble.com/premium with the promo code STUDIO. No ads, more freedom, and content that you actually care about. That's the deal. You can use the QR code or just go through that link. Thank you very much to Rumble. All right, now continuing. Ooh, I did not mean to close that. Reopen last closed tab. All right, so J.D. Vance also, of course, attended this cabinet meeting, and He also had some thoughts on the mass immigration that was allowed to happen not only under the Biden administration, but also throughout many past administrations as well. And J.D. Vance blames this mass migration for many of the ills that young people are feeling today.
Very clearly is that we are fixing the problem that Joe Biden and the Democrats created in the last administration. If you look at every affordability crisis that's confronting the American people today, it is traceable directly to a problem caused by Joe Biden and congressional Democrats. Why did homes get so unaffordable? Because we had 20 million illegal aliens in this country taking homes that ought by right to go to American citizens. Why did tax bills get so unaffordable? Because Democrats were raising taxes while congressional Republicans under the president's leadership, we're now cutting taxes. Why did food get so expensive? Because we printed trillions of dollars and threw it into green scams that made our economy suffer while Americans were paying higher prices for food.
So we get rid of all of these people. We get rid of all of these unnecessary, burdensome restrictions and extra fees that have been tacked onto Americans over the years like a pot of boiling frogs. And we're going to make life far more livable. Now, here's another based take from Kristi Noem. She posted this last night. She said, I just met with the president. I am recommending a full travel ban on every damn country that's been flooding our nation with killers, leeches, and entitlement junkies. Our forefathers built this nation on blood, sweat, and the unyielding love of freedom. Not for foreign invaders to slaughter our heroes, suck dry our hard-earned tax dollars, or snatch the benefits that are owed to Americans. Again, totally based. Let me go through a couple of rants over here. Blue Lady said the cartels are in control of California, all of it. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Jixerman says the media as a whole is like one big Kramer effect. If you assume the opposite to be true, you may not be batting 1,000, but your average will definitely be higher. Absolutely, sir. Emerald Dragon says, Rhode Islander here. All I have to say is put the squeeze on this corrupt-ass state. Love you, Zach, and I love my president. Love you too, my friend. Good to see you. Blue Lady also says the illegals use dead people's social security numbers to get everything. Yes. They use dead people's social security numbers, but they also, under the Biden administration, had a brand new social security number scheme that they would give people for non-citizens. So there is a huge problem amongst the social security numbers, and this is something that we are being able to sort out right now. Let me say thank you to RedGun51 for the can. Thank you to Sean Joe for 1, 2, 3 cookies, and then another cookie. He says, RP, all admin needs to say they choose to hold on to the boat, so orders were to destroy the boat, and they chose to go down with the ship. Sean Joe, thank you for the can. Filter Dog says, Kelly knows the UCMJ. He's screwed. That's why he is so nervous. Sean Joe, thank you for another cookie. Smot Poker says, thanks so much for working hard, Zach. Thank you so much, Smot Poker. Sean Joe, thank you for another cookie. And RedGun51, thank you for the can. Appreciate you. All right, now, speaking of illegal aliens, New York City has just quietly released nearly 7,000 dangerous illegal immigrants, including rapists, killers, terrorists, and repeat offenders. And they did this with no notice to ICE. Now, this is something that we had expected was coming in the near future because there was a court case which a judge had demanded that all of these people be released. U.S. Customs and Immigration's Enforcement Director Todd Lyons had issued an explosive letter to New York Attorney General Letitia James demanding the immediate action be taken after state and local officials quietly released these 7,000 criminal murderers into the community. Murderers, rapists, killers, gang members, repeat violent offenders, all of it without any notice to ICE, even though they all had detainers and not a single notification to any federal agency. Since January 20th, New York has released 6,947 criminal illegal aliens back onto the streets. Out of this number, we can tie them to 29 homicides, 2,509 assaults, 199 burglaries, 305 robberies, 392 dangerous drug offenses, 300 weapons offenses, 207 sexual predatory offenses. When you look at numbers like that, how can you believe anything other than the person who would make this decision hates you? They hate you with every fiber of your being. They want to put you, your wife, your children, your family in danger. They want you to be the next victim on a street. They want you to be the next carjacking victim. They want your daughter to be the next victim of a DUI accident at the hands of an illegal alien. They want your wife to get raped in an elevator by a Somali with a gun. They don't care about you. They want these people on the streets because they love chaos. They want there to be as much murder, mayhem, and crime as possible. And it's worse. Another 7,113 criminal illegal aliens remain in New York custody, all with active ICE detainers, and the state officials continue to ignore it. Now, among these people who are still in custody, you've got 148 that are currently charged with homicide, 717 that are currently charged with assault, 134 that are charged with burglary, 106 that are charged with robbery, 235 that are charged with dangerous drug offenses, 152 with weapons offenses, and 260 sexual predatory offenses. This is a full-scale public safety disaster that's been engineered by Letitia James and many others among the far-left officials who want to deliberately defy federal law. Renee Sim, thank you very much. Renee Sim L says, thank you so much for all the news you investigated for us. Thank you, Red Pill family, also for giving us your time. Much appreciated. I sincerely appreciate you, Renee. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. All right, now, the Assistant DHS Secretary, Tricia McLaughlin, blasted Letitia James and the state of New York's political leadership for releasing these predators onto streets. ICE has also sent that urgent letter to Attorney General James. They did it back in September, demanding that she cooperate, but she never responded. So Tricia McLaughlin said, Attorney General James and her fellow New York sanctuary politicians are releasing murderers, terrorists, and sexual predators back into our neighborhoods and putting American lives at risk. We are calling on Letitia James to stop this dangerous derangement and commit to honoring the ICE arrest detainers of more than 7,000 criminal illegal aliens in New York custody. It's common sense. Criminal illegal aliens should not be released back onto our streets to terrorize more innocent Americans. Every single American that's a victim of a violent crime by one of these people is directly attributable to people like Letitia James. They are to blame. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. It is high time that we start prosecuting the people who allow this practice to take place, because without this taking place, these people would be locked up and they wouldn't be in a position to victimize, to rob, to rape, to murder, to carjack, to do any of these crimes to American citizens. Now, here are some of those terrorists and illegal alien criminals that they've got in their custody. Stephen Daniel Henriquez Galicia. He was arrested by local authorities for attempted murder and criminal possession of a weapon. He had an ICE detainer, but he was allowed to leave. On September 20th, ICE arrested him in the Bronx, and he's now being detained by ICE pending his immigration proceedings. You've got this looker right here, Anderson Smith Satuye Martinez. On August 19th of this year, local authorities arrested him. He's a Crips gang member. He was in criminal possession of a weapon and possession of a controlled substance. He was also prior convicted for assault. He had an ICE detainer that was lodged against him, but again, he was released by local authorities on September 11th. ICE was able to arrest him in the Bronx, and he currently remains detained by ICE pending his immigration removal proceedings. This looker as well, Jose David Hernandez Hernandez. The name's so nice, they said it twice. On September 29th, local authorities arrested Hernandez Hernandez for rape, strangulation, and assault. Again, despite an ICE detainer, he was released by local authorities on October 6th. He was picked up by ICE in the Bronx, and they still have him chained up. Hussein Aslan was arrested by the NYPD for crimes which included, but were not limited to, rape, assault, and criminal contempt. He was convicted for aggravated criminal contempt, violating an order of protection and causing physical injury. Again, he had an ICE detainer. He was released after his sentencing. On July 22nd, ICE was able to arrest him, and he is behind bars. Oriano Garcia Fiorentino. Oriana, on September 23rd of this year, was arrested by local authorities for assault and endangering the welfare of a child. Despite that ICE detainer, he was released. On September 24th, the next day, ICE was able to get him for a targeted enforcement action. And on October 25th, he was kicked out and sent to Mexico. Selman Sevic. Selman Sevic was arrested by local authorities. He's a criminal illegal alien from Turkey in September. He was arrested for menacing in the first degree and harassment in the first degree. He's known as a suspected terrorist with notifications that were made to the Terrorism Screening Center. ICE had a detainer. Local authorities released him. On September 13th, ICE arrested him, and they've got him locked up. You've also got Vyacheslav Danilovich Kim. Danilovich Kim was arrested by NYSP for use of a child less than 17 years of age in a sexual performance. He was also arrested on rape in the second degree, disseminating indecent material to minors, and patronizing a person for prostitution in the second degree of a person less than 15 years of age. On February 27th of 2013, Kim was convicted and sentenced him to time served and 5 years probation. He raped a child, didn't even have to go behind bars. Albany County and New York probation refused to assist ICE in locating or arresting him. Instead, ICE finally arrested him in September of 2024 as he left an appointment with his probation officer, and he was removed from the United States. Alexander Moreno Montoya. He had an extensive criminal history, including charges of assaulting a police officer, criminal possession of a weapon, cocaine possession. He had ICE detainers, but he was released by local authorities in March. He had previously been held at Rikers Island. On July 8th, he was arrested in New York City, and he was removed from the United States. We've also got Diego Fernando Huicha? I can't say it. Anyways, he had an ICE detainer lodged against him. He was arrested for robbery, assault with intent to cause physical injury, harassment with physical contact back in March. He was self-admitted as having an affiliation with the Vatos Locos gang in Ecuador. He was a captain in that gang. In June, ICE arrested him, and he was removed from the United States. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Sebastian Jaramillo Balanta. He was arrested for assault, grand larceny, and criminal possession of stolen property. He's now in ICE's hands and pending removal in the near future. Manuel Rigoberto Takuri Kashipi. He was arrested for 3 previous DUI convictions in New York, and he was arrested for another DUI in March. ICE issued the detainer. Albany County Jail let him go, and he was subsequently released by the New York State Police and forced ICE to arrest him at his residence. Jesus Romero Hernandez was arrested in Buffalo for assault, a machete attack on his victim in the streets of Ithaca. He was removed from the United States by ICE, and he is not going to be bothering anybody here in the very near future. Now, where do we go from here? Well, we've got operations taking place in Chicago, New York City, down in Memphis, in Charlotte. It appears that the next hotspot for Commander Greg Bovino and the boys of ICE is going to be New Orleans, because apparently in New Orleans there are 80,000 illegal aliens with a final order of removal that are living there. Take a look at this.
So we know right now Chief Gregory Bovino, he's the one that will be running the operations here in New Orleans. He also ran the operations in Chicago, LA, and Charlotte as well. They're actually in transit right now to get to the Louisiana area, New Orleans area. So those operations will begin in the coming days. But why New Orleans? Well, as you might imagine, we obtained data exclusively from our sources, as we usually do here at News Nation. When it comes to the Louisiana area, we're looking at nearly 80,000 illegal immigrants with a final order of removal. More than 15,000 are convicted criminals out of nearly 350,000 active ICE cases. When we talk about those special interest countries, we have some data on those as well. So we're talking about roughly 35,000 cases in the Louisiana area. When it comes to those 19, quote, high-risk countries, those special interest countries, we know that at least 2,200 of them are living in this area with a final order of removal. That means a judge said they don't qualify for asylum and they have to leave. Now, 570 of them are roughly convicted criminals, Nicole. So that gives us kind of a picture as to why we will see some sweeping enforcement here in New Orleans as well.
Get them, boys. That's all I got to say about that. We need to get rid of these people. People from 19 different countries. They've all been identified as high risk. Get them the hell out of this country and get some sense back into New Orleans. Now, one of those areas that has been very widely reported on that have been touched by this problem is the trucking industry. Secretary Sean Duffy of the Transportation Administration, or the U.S. Department of Transportation, rather, had his own piece to say earlier today in the meeting. And he, of course, had to talk about the over 7,000 drivers that they were able to pull off the roads because they could not speak English. They could not read the signs. Certainly don't want them driving around on the streets, but he has also purged nearly half of the trucking schools from the U.S. Department of Transportation's list of approved schools. So now 50% of those schools are no longer able to certify people because they were doing it illegally. Take a listen. I may have to refresh.
There have been states that have issued commercial driver's license to foreigners, and they've gone through sham schools, and they're not safe on American roadways. And so, in partnership with Secretary Noem, we have driven those numbers down. We got California, Gavin Newsom, to revoke 17,000 unlawfully issued licenses. We've closed down half of the fake schools that give out these fake licenses, all critically important. Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota gave 33% of these licenses unlawfully. People that should never have a driver's license driving a big rig on American roads.
I want you to keep in mind that last statement. Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota gave 33% of the licenses that were passed out in Minnesota illegally. Now, it's a big job. And as many people as they've taken off the roads, it's not enough, because we've just had another tragic incident take place in California. This time, a criminal Indian illegal alien driving a semi-truck. He had obtained his CDL in California, but he jackknifed his trailer in Oregon, and he just killed 2 innocent people. This occurred last week. So an order from the DHS on November 24th, 2025, Rajinder Kumar, a criminal illegal alien from India, jackknifed his semi-truck and trailer, blocking both lanes of U.S. Highway 20. A Subaru Outback collided with the semi-truck, tragically killing both the driver, William Micah Carter, and the passenger, Jennifer Lynn Lower. I believe we have a local news story right here, and maybe we'll learn a little bit more about this young couple that was tragically taken from us.
A 32-year-old truck driver from Fresno, California, has been arrested after his truck.
A 32-year-old truck driver who got his license in California. He's from India.
Jackknifed east of Bend, leading to a deadly crash. It happened Monday night on Highway 20 east of Brothers. Oregon State Police say that truck and trailer blocked the highway, but they did not say why. A man from Springfield and a woman.
Because he's a moron, because these people don't know how to drive. He tried doing a U-turn. This is what always happens. They try doing an illegal U-turn on the highway. The truck is obviously too big. The trailer doesn't work. And then they end up blocking the highway, and then people don't see it, and they smash into it, and they die.
From John Day were killed after their SUV crashed into the trailer. Investigators said dark conditions and a lack of active warning equipment contributed to the crash. OSP said the truck driver was arrested on suspicion of criminally negligent homicide and reckless endangering.
Okay, now, obviously, this is a report coming out of Oregon, so I expect nothing less but the wokest interpretation of the story. Now, the DHS had said that Rajinder Kumar was released into the interior of the U.S. by guess who? The Biden administration. Gavin Newsom in California helped him obtain his CDL. He is a criminal, illegal alien. Biden allowed him to come in here. California allowed him to get a commercial driver's license. He did not speak English. How many more senseless tragedies must take place before sanctuary politicians stop allowing illegal aliens to dangerously operate semi-trucks on America's roads? Now, here's the thing. The Department of Transportation already told California that they needed to revoke all of those licenses that they passed out. So Mr. Kumar, at this point, already should have known that his license was no longer good. Or the trucking company that employed him should have known that he should have been pulled off of the highways. So Gavin Newsom, in my opinion, is directly to blame for the death of this young couple. Right here, well, we've already talked about this, but this just keeps happening over and over and over again. It's going to keep happening until we get all of them off the streets. Now, here is an interaction that took place between Representative Andy Biggs and the confirmed Antifa member Maxwell Frost, and they were discussing the finer points of TPS, which is temporary protected status, if I'm not mistaken. Let's take a listen here.
What does the T in TPS stand for?
He is creating
what is the T?
No.
I answered your question. Answer mine. What does the T stand for?
Temporary protective status.
The T stands for temporary protective class. And here's the deal. Temporary parole status. That's what it stands for. And what that means is we're going to parole you in for a period of time. We have people who have been paroled in for their temporary period of time for more than 20 years. More than 20 years. And they won't go home.
So you're saying,
and I'm suggesting they need to go home. That's what President Trump. That's what President Trump's suggesting. I think that's what the American people want. And when we get back to this question,
none of the polls show that now.
I'm sorry.
None of the polls show that now. The American people.
Yeah, the polls actually do show that now. We don't want these people here. We don't need people who are just sucking benefits up, living the high life, refusing to integrate, to become American citizens, who just sit there in this status, this limbo status, getting all of the benefits of living in a first world nation without having to actually act as if they live in a first world nation.
People are overwhelmingly against what this president's doing in immigration. In fact, for the first time in history, more people are with us.
I'll take my time back. I was respectful and let you ask your question. I disagree with you. I disagree with your interpretation of what polling is saying. What I'm suggesting to you is this bill corrects an inequity. So let me give you an example. How many people are in Congress from California that shouldn't be here because you overcounted, including apportionment of illegal aliens? By some estimates, it's as high as 7.
That's in California alone. We know this is a big problem. This is why we're trying to address the issue with the census before we get to the midterms. Now, let's turn it back to the conversation about Minnesota. President Trump went hard on the topic of Somali immigrants at the tail end of his cabinet meeting today. What does President Trump think about these Somalis who are using United States resources, scamming Medicaid, scamming the federal government, being allowed to engage in this behavior by people like Governor Tim Walz? Well, he's not going to be shy about it. Maxwell Frost is pointing to polls that don't exist. So he as a radical left-wing anarchist, has no care for the truth. Hang on, I got to refresh it.
And they contribute nothing. The welfare is like 88%. They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you, okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country is no good for a reason. Their country stinks, and we don't want them in our country. I could say that.
Their country stinks.
About other countries, too. I can say it about other countries, too. We don't want them to hell. We have to rebuild our country. You know, our country's at a tipping point. We could go bad. We're at a tipping point. I don't know if people mind me saying that, but I'm saying it. We could go one way or the other, and we're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. Ilhan Omar is garbage. She's garbage. Her friends are garbage. These aren't people that work. These aren't people that say, let's go, come on, let's make this place great. These are people that do nothing but complain. They complain. And from where they came from, they got nothing. You know, they came from paradise, and they said, this isn't paradise. But when they come from hell, and they complain, and do nothing but bitch, we don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Go back to where you came from. Exactly. And it's not Somalia. Excuse me, it's not Minnesota. It's Somalia. Go back to Somalia and work on your own damn country and quit talking shit about the United States of America. Now, here we have an American handyman from Minneapolis who's talking about the changing demographics of the area. He has gradually witnessed as the Somali population has gone from just a portion of the Minneapolis population to now being the majority of the Minneapolis population. And strangely enough, they also are the majority holders of Section 8 housing. Take a look.
I'm from Minneapolis, and Somalians are just part of the culture here. As far back as I can remember, I've always seen Somalians. And in these past 5 years, the population increased so much. It went from seeing them to them feeling like the majority a lot of places that I go. And also over the past few years, I've noticed that I see a lot of them with new cars.
Isn't that strange? They just happen to have brand new cars, but they're living in Section 8 housing? Well, we know how that's happening because they're scammers.
So I'm a handyman, and I worked on a lot of Section 8 housing to make sure they're up to standard. And one thing I've noticed when I go to these Section 8 houses, one, it's usually a Somali family. And what I mean usually, it's 9 times out of 10. And those houses usually have new cars in the front. I mean cars with an S, multiple new cars. And what I mean usually is like 8 out of 10 Somali houses, I've seen that. And I always wondered how someone on Section 8 can afford multiple new cars. I just couldn't put it together. So now finding out about this fraud stuff makes so much sense. And you know who I feel bad for other than me for paying for that shit with my taxes? Is Somalians who came here on the up and up and who didn't break the law. Because as a black man, I know how it feels to be judged because someone else with your same skin color did some stupid shit that you wouldn't approve of. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, but one thing I do know is I've been saying for years we need to kick Tim Walz out because he knew about this shit from the beginning.
He did know about this shit from the beginning, and that is a highly topical thing that is going to make up the bulk of what we're going to be talking about next. Now, the Department of Justice has just sued the state of Minnesota because they refused to turn over their voter registration list. Yet another blue state refusing to hand over data because illegal aliens have been living in Minnesota, and as we all believe, they have been fraudulently registered to vote. So the order from the Department of Justice is requiring them to provide the United States with Minnesota's current statewide voter registration list that includes active and inactive voters, containing all fields, including the registrant's full name, date of birth, their residential address, and every other bit of information that will allow us to identify exactly who they are. Just like Tim Walz was aware of all of the fraud that was going on as he was importing all of these people from Somalia, he was also aware of all of these people being illegally registered to vote because they are useful when it comes time to pad that ballot box. Now, we have yet another incidence of the FBI raiding a couple of more locations in Minnesota because there is more fraud taking place. Take a look.
It's a familiar sight in Minnesota. This exclusive video shows FBI agents walking out with boxes of evidence.
And that is absolutely something that our community cannot sustain.
One of 2 facilities raided on Thursday, Star Autism Center's office in St. Cloud and Smart Therapy Center in Minneapolis. Familiar because this is what it looked like when agents raided homes connected to the largest pandemic fraud case in the country. And new court documents show at least a dozen of the defendants charged for their role in the Feeding Our Future scheme owned, received money from, or were associated with autism clinics. In this case, the alleged scheme boils down to charging Medicaid millions for care they didn't actually provide.
So it was, I believe, a week or two ago that we first heard about these schemes being revealed. Now the FBI is going in and actually taking these people down, including maybe Tim Walz, because Tim Walz himself is now the target of a new House investigation, in large part due to the $1 billion in fraud that we can point to from a number of different areas, whether it's the autism fraud, the Feeding Our Future fraud, the Medicaid fraud, the list goes on and on. So the House Oversight Committee has just opened a brand new probe into Governor Tim Walz's handling of the massive relief programs in Minnesota that federal prosecutors say have devolved into the largest COVID-19 fraud scheme in history. Governor Walz was warned about massive fraud in a pandemic food aid program for children, but he chose to do nothing, James Comer said. Instead, whistleblowers who raised concerns faced retaliation. This is the people who I spoke about yesterday at the Minnesota DHS account. And because of Governor Walz's negligence, criminals, which includes Somali terrorists, stole nearly $1 billion from the program while children suffered. The House Oversight Committee will conduct a thorough investigation into Governor Walz's failure to safeguard taxpayer dollars. Comer's decision comes as the Treasury Department has also announced that they, too, are investigating this scandal, and then they're looking into whether or not Minnesota tax dollars were diverted to the terrorist organization Al-Shabaab. We already know that they were. The Justice Department has said approximately $300 million in taxpayer funds, which were intended to feed low-income children during this pandemic, were diverted through a nonprofit called Feeding Our Future in a sprawling case that has now grown to at least 78 defendants. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota said it's the largest pandemic fraud scheme in the U.S. to date that has received charges. Some of the organizations tied to the fraud were run by Somali Minnesotans. Minnesota educated officials say Feeding Our Futures and its partner organizations submitted more than $500 million in claims, and Comer has alleged the total losses allegedly reach $1 billion. That is only from the Feeding Our Future scheme. Now, Walz has come under fire because of those Department of Human Services employees that I just spoke about. They claim he failed to act after many early warnings of widespread fraud, and he retaliated against these internal whistleblowers. Because James Comer is the GOP-led committee chairman, he's empowered to subpoena records and witnesses and to refer potential wrongdoing to the Department of Justice. I believe Tim Walz is going to be looking at charges for himself. Now, a report by the Manhattan Institute's City Journal, they claim that unnamed federal counterterrorism sources have said that some of these stolen funds were then transferred overseas to Somalia. They ended up in the hands of Al-Shabaab, although none of the federal indictments to date include terrorism charges, but the Justice Department has yet to confirm any such link. Employees at the Minnesota Department of Human Services have said that Walz is 100% responsible for the massive fraud in Minnesota. We let him know early on. He systematically retaliated against us. The news of this probe was first reported by the New York Post, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent yesterday launched his own federal probe into the Minnesota tax dollars that were siphoned off and then sent to Al-Shabaab during the Biden administration. And thanks to the leadership of President Trump, we are acting fast to ensure that Americans' taxes are not funding acts of global terror. There are so many instances of fraud coming out of Minnesota. I believe we are going to have virtually every federal agency that could possibly touch on this involved in a string of investigations. It is going to be impossible for Tim Walz to escape without having charges brought against him. Now, in a press conference from either yesterday or early this morning, Tim Walz was asked about this massive fraud that was happening right under his nose, and he chose to do nothing about it. In typical Tim Walz fashion, he fidgeted, he diverted, he talked about a whole bunch of things, but he didn't actually talk about the fraud that was happening under his watch or the fact that he chose to ignore it and retaliate against whistleblowers. Take a listen.
When the President of the United States sets up and tweets 150 times after midnight and targets certain people, It's not a coincidence that they're targeting Minnesota. We certainly welcome those investigations. They've been done by all of you, and they've been done here. We certainly want to know that, but it's also the transportation secretary who is threatening to withhold our federal dollars. Look, that's who they are. This is who they are. We welcome anybody who wants to help us. We're fixing it. And I said, Minnesotans know us and our team. We led us through COVID. We led us through George Floyd. We brought our economy to one of the best in the country. And we'll tackle this. Other governors have dealt with fraud. I want to make sure I'm the last one that has to do.
Nobody has dealt with this level of fraud, and nobody has had fraud that could be so distinctly associated with a particular ethnic group of immigrants that were allowed to come in and take over their state.
With it by putting these things in. If they want to help us, I welcome that. I think they do an investigation, find out, but I don't think anybody in here really believes their motive and their timing is about actually doing something about this, much like the legislature. They had every opportunity to do investigations. They had every opportunity to do their oversight. They chose not to. The very legislatures that are required to do an audit have not done their own audit. The very legislature.
Because it's a bunch of commie Democrat farmer laborers. Nobody wants to do the investigation because nobody wants that shit on their face.
That has Republican legislators accusing other Republican legislators of fraud in the PPP program, the federal program, demonizing an entire population and lying to people about the safety and security of this state is beneath that. And I will just add, as a teacher and as a parent, the absolutely pathetic usage of a slur, not to me. I don't care what he calls me. He calls me many things. But don't think that doesn't hurt our children. Don't think it doesn't hurt people who are dealing with this. And this is not normal. It's not both sidesism. We're solving problems. We're making life more affordable. We're talking about bringing people in, and we're getting this. They need to focus on the war crimes that are coming up. They need to focus on making life more affordable. They need to focus on the issues they're dealing with. We just had a state dinner for the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who is directly responsible for the murder of American journalists. That seems to me to be something Republicans should be concerned about because that is factual, based, and researched and verified. That's a little different than this speculation. But
he's totally full of shit. Everybody knows that Tim Walz is full of shit. And I believe that Tim Walz is scared in the same way that Mark Kelly is scared. Now, it gets worse. Take a listen to this. Kristi Noem, also today at the cabinet meeting, mentions that President Trump had asked her to look into visa fraud in the state of Minnesota. Because, of course, we have Ilhan Omar, the brother lover, married her brother for immigration fraud. Take a listen to this. It's bad.
You told me to look into Minnesota and their fraud on visas and their programs. 50% of them are fraudulent, which means that wacko Governor Walz either is an idiot or he did it on purpose. And I think he's bold, sir. He brought people in there illegally that never should have been in this country, said they were somebody that they're not. They said they were married to somebody who was their brother or somebody else. Fraudulent visa applications, signed up for government programs, took hundreds of billions of dollars from the taxpayers, and we're going to remove them and we're going to get our money back. You told me
50%. 50% of the people in Minnesota are there fraudulently. My goodness, there's no way Tim Walz is going to get away with this. All right, finally, before we round out the show, I've got one last final message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, new research says that 80% of Americans and 3/4 of Trump voters support America First international assistance. According to a new poll by McLaughlin, one of President Trump's pollsters, Americans across the country support assistance designed to root out fraud, tamp down terrorism, secure our borders, support our small farmers, and feed starving children. And over 70% of Trump voters believe that President Trump should win the Nobel Peace Prize if he creates a world where almost no child starves to death. This is the type of assistance that we can get behind. Many people will try to stop him, but only President Trump can turn America First international assistance into a reality. If he does it, a Nobel Prize is in his future. You can check them out there at the QR code or the link in the chat. Thank you very much. And let us continue. Tim Walz is not in a good position. He is freaking out. Now, we're also doing an investigation through the Small Business Association. So now we've got 5 6 when you count Congress, okay? 6 different avenues of investigation that are now currently beginning in the state of Minnesota. President Trump's Small Business Administration has just launched a full investigation into Somali organizations defrauding taxpayers through SBA loans in Tim Walz's Minnesota. Kelly Loeffler said numerous individuals and nonprofits, non-governmental organizations, indicted, are indicted in the $1 billion Minnesota COVID fraud scandal, including Feeding Our Future. They all received SBA PPP loans in addition to other state and federal funding. Today, I have ordered an investigation into the network of Somali organizations and executives implicated in these schemes. Despite Governor Walz's best efforts to obstruct, SBA continues to work to expose, abuse, and hold perpetrators accountable. Full stop. Well, there you go. It is not looking good. Oh, and by the way, here's an example of the people that Tim Walz was bringing into Minnesota. A Somali man, Billy Mohammed, was responsible for the rape of a 15-year-old girl, and then he did it again.
Man out on probation for sexual assault is charged once again. This time, prosecutors say he picked up a woman he met on Snapchat and raped her at a hotel in Bloomington.
Now, prosecutors once called this man an extreme public safety risk, but he never spent a day in prison for his previous crimes. Fox 9's Mike Manzoni joining us from our newsroom now. And Mike, prosecutors signed off on plea deals in these previous cases.
Kelsey and Randy, a judge sentenced the Minneapolis man in those cases back in May, but he got credit for time served.
Notice that they call him a Minneapolis man. He's a Somali man.
So he never went to prison. It was all part of a pair of plea deals. This is the man we're talking about. His name is Abdemahat Billy Muhammad, but prosecutors say the 28-year-old uses the names Kareem and Altesto on Snapchat. And that is where investigators say he met his latest victim as well as his 2 previous ones. Prosecutors say he picked up his most recent victim in Mankato back in September and drove her to a hotel near the Mall of America where he took her phone, told her she wasn't leaving, raped her, and held her against her will for days. That's according to prosecutors.
Notice they don't even mention that she was only 15 years old. They just call her a woman off of Snapchat. No, she's a 15-year-old girl.
Investigators used DNA to identify Muhammad as the suspect. His profile was already in the database from previous cases involving sexual assaults in Minneapolis in 2017 and another one in 2024. A Hennepin County judge sentenced Muhammad in May in those cases, including one involving a 15-year-old girl. Prosecutors say 2 other unidentified men took part in that assault, and one threatened the victim with a gun. But Muhammad never spent a day in prison, as we said, because he got credit for time served while awaiting trial as part of a pair of plea deals. We've reached out to the Hennepin County Attorney's Office for comment. A spokesman there told us it is checking into it.
Oh, yeah, we're definitely going to look into our own corruption and our propensity to allow rapists who rape 15-year-old girls at gunpoint, our propensity to just let them out. Hennepin County, by the way, is the same county where that judge just overturned the guilty verdict of the man and woman who were convicted of $7 million in fraudulent embezzlement from the federal government. Now, here is an excellent breakdown from a young man who lives in North Dakota, but it's right next to Minnesota. And he was actually in an accident recently with a Somali woman. Well, he started thinking, why are there so many Somalis here? And much like you might imagine, it's all about the money.
Why are Somalians in America? Yesterday, a Somalian rear-ended me, which thankfully no one was hurt and no damage was done to my truck. But it got me thinking, why are Somalians in America? Especially North Dakota and Minnesota. So I looked into it. The main group bringing in Somalians is Lutheran Social Services. They are led by this guy, and this is his staff. And turns out they get $2,375 for every Somalian they bring over. But we have to ask the question, why are they coming over here in the first place? And another surprise, turns out our government was funding a dictatorship in Somalia throughout the Cold War, led by Saeed Barre. And this dictatorship led to clan favoritism and overall just destabilized the country. and inevitably collapsed in 1991. Also, our troops were over there. This is where the movie Black Hawk Down comes from. But overall, Somalians have no right to be in America, especially North Dakota and Minnesota. They don't integrate into our societies. They carry over their clan mentalities. If you personally have never interacted with a Somalian or just don't believe me, I would recommend checking out Nick Shirley's video he did the other day. What do you guys think about all this? Let me know down in the comments below. My name's Jeb Ball. Like and follow for more America First content.
So shut down the money pipeline. Stop funding Lutheran Social Services to bring Somalians over to the United States of America. That would be a wonderful thing. Here we go. One more story from Minnesota. A judge in Minnesota was just arrested for driving under the influence over the weekend. Now, according to Crime Watch Minneapolis, Minnesota Court of Appeals Judge Renee Lee Work was arrested in Steele County, and she was released only 4 hours later from the drunk tank. Now, strangely enough, maybe because she's a Circuit Court of Appeals judge, no charges have been filed. Crime Watch Minneapolis was told the arrest was probable cause, driving while intoxicated. She probably refused to do any field sobriety tests, probably refused to take a breathalyzer, maybe was hoping that she wouldn't even have to do a blood test. Doesn't sound like they took her to the hospital, so that didn't probably happen. But last month, a top Iowa judge was charged with operating a vehicle while intoxicated after she drove drunk, passed out behind the wheel, and veered into oncoming traffic. Now, in that case, witnesses called 911 because they saw this woman, identified as Iowa Chief Judge Audria Kester, slumped over the steering wheel on Highway 30 near Boone, the Des Moines Register reported. An intoxicated Kester reportedly drove the wrong way on Highway 30 before passing out. Kester has pled not guilty. In September, a Georgia Superior Court judge was arrested for drunk driving after he backed his Mercedes into a truck in the parking lot of Wacko's Gentlemen's Club. It's a strip bar. 48-year-old Robert Guy Jr. was arrested and booked after he backed his Mercedes into a Ford F-150 and then offered the owner of the truck $500 to avoid giving his identity and insurance information. Guy tried to drive off, but he couldn't because he was too wasted. According to the arrest report, Guy was slurring his words, and police could smell a strong odor of alcohol on him. So we're going to keep an eye on Minnesota Court of Appeals Judge Renee Lee Work out of Steele County, and we're going to see if they do end up charging her. All right, now, you know what? Scott Bessent, we already kind of talked about this. Scott Bessent just talking about the restructuring of the economy and how we're making things better for everyone here in the United States of America. We'll go ahead and call it there. Let me do the final thank yous from our friends over here on Pilled. Let me say thank you to... It looks like the last one is Sean Joe. Thank you very much, Sean Joe, for the cookie. And thank you to everyone here in the chat for hanging out with us. Hope you had a good day. I had a great time on today's show. Looking forward to Tim Walz getting indicted. Looking forward to him facing the criminal culpability that he needs to have come his way. I hope that you guys have a wonderful evening. Do me a favor, hit that like button. I do need to make sure that I set up a raid before I send you guys all out the door. Let me make sure I didn't miss. I did miss a couple over here on Rumble. I am Rosie too, says, I appreciate you, Zach, from California. Thank you, Rosie. And then Blue Lady also says, in Northern California, the cartels need to be deported, but an investigation needs to be done because all government officials are being paid by the cartels. Lots of illegals here. Yes, it is a situation that is bad, bad, bad. It's one of the reasons why I support New California. Let me see. Who is live? I'll send you guys over to Quite Frankly. How's that? And then I'll do the same thing over here on Rumble. Let me just get this opened up, and I will find Quite Frankly. There we go. And, all right, copy that, and /raid, paste, confirm. All right, you guys, passing out the gold pills over there on Pilled. Good luck. God bless. I will see you here tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Until that time, peace.
I didn't see Brad and Abby on the list of people who were live. I already set up, quite frankly. I'll do Brad and Abby next Tuesday.